Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. I'm Steve Crane. I'm joined by Nate Hale and Dustin Bovey at the table tonight. We are episode 151. So welcome, everyone, to 151.
There it is.
There we go. Welcome.
I thought you were telling
welcome you guys. No, I was looking peripheral.
I was trying to pour.
But yeah, so I want to thank our sponsors tonight, Tinder Box at Easton. We are going to be smoking the Illusione F9, part of the original document series from Illusione. So thank you, Tinder Box at Easton. Check them out in Columbus, Ohio. They have this cigar as well as many, many others, as well as some gift sets I know still from the holidays. So check them out. Some of them are right now 25% off now until next Wednesday where we're doing a podcast. We also have Altadis USA. I've got the Monte Cristo Espada, which is coming out of the Placencia Farms, which we've talked about on the podcast before. So thank you to Josh Bentley with Altadis for doing all the hard work and getting our sponsorship as well. We're working on getting some more swag. BS Cigar Company, we have the gold back in as well as the silver. So that's also the gold's coming from Placencia Tobacco, and the silver is coming from Espinosa and La Zona factory in Nicaragua. So all Nicaraguan tobacco, check them out. And you guys, patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. Thank you very much for the support. Helps us keep this thing going. Helps keep the lights on in the garage/studio. So we appreciate that very, very much. And if you guys want to share it, if you're listening live right now, share it on any of the groups you're a part of. Share it on your personal page, what have you. Get more listeners in. Tonight, we're going to be drinking the Legent, two true legends, Legent, one truly unique bourbon. Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, partially finished wine, and sherry cask. So interested in trying this one. There's a little bit of a story as far as who's behind that. We're looking forward to that. If you guys have any questions for us tonight, it's going to be kind of a round table type of a not lightning round, but something like that on part 2 on Beyond the BS. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. So guys, how have you guys been? Dustin, you haven't been on the camera for a few weeks here.
It's been a hot minute, that's for sure.
Hot minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, things are really good. Just crazy busy with work, and with everything going on in the world, it's makes it even more stressful.
Sure.
People in and out, and needing time off and what have you, and so it adds another level of stress and a lot of changes. But what's life without changes, I guess. So, but overall, it's
steady, consistent.
Yeah, you could say that.
Sure.
A lot of things are consistent. Change.
Nate, how about you?
Well, so last week I had mentioned that things were busy at work because first week of the new year, sales kicking off and all that. Yeah, this week's been even more crazy.
Okay, good.
Like to the point to where it took me until about 4:00 today to completely get caught up with everything that had come in the since like yesterday morning.
So a full day's work.
Well, that was just to get caught up and wait. Like the whole time, more and more stuff's coming in, and so at one point, like I was trying to finish up stuff from the previous couple days.
Yeah,
hadn't touched anything that had come in my inbox in the last 2 hours. At one point,
so you're just playing catch up constantly is what you're saying.
Yeah,
I got you. Yeah, full day's work.
Yep. Yeah. It can wear on you if you don't find a balance to like, all right, do I finish the old stuff? Do I start the new stuff?
Sure.
Like, yeah.
Sure.
Full day's work.
Oh, come on. All right. So, so we are tonight smoking the Illusione F9, like I mentioned. And I do want to thank everyone for tuning in. Let's start with the bourbon, though. I'm going to pour. You guys are way ahead of me at this point.
I poured it.
Well,
I drank it.
You had some hosting responsibilities to do.
Something like that. No, I'm looking forward to this. This is interesting from what you guys told me so far. Very cool bottle. Even on the cork, and I'll get into this, but it says on the top of the cork, Kentucky has the logo Legent, and then it has Japan underneath. And then underneath, actually, on the inside, if you will, of the cork, it says 2 legends, 1 bourbon. So Nate or Dustin, Nate, you brought it here, so let's hear from you on what we're drinking.
So Legent is primarily coming out of Jim Beam, which is owned by Suntory.
Okay.
So it's a collaboration of those 2 companies.
Okay.
So you have Fred No, who is 7th generation in the whiskey world. He works at Jim Beam. And then you have Shinji Fukuyo.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah. He is the chief blender for Suntory.
Okay.
So outside of the bourbon world, because in the bourbon world, like we treat the master distillers as, you know, the celebrity. Outside of the bourbon world, it's the blenders that they care about.
Explain the difference there.
So the master distiller is the one who's responsible for distilling that whiskey and making sure the product that goes into the barrels.
Okay.
With blenders, like their job is they'll take barrels and they're blending stuff together to hit a certain flavor profile.
Got it.
They're not doing single barrels and small batches and stuff like that. They're blending a bunch of different stuff to try and hit a flavor. So what this is there's 3 bourbons from Jim Beam, and then they take 2 of those and they age them in French oak wine casks.
Mm-hmm.
And then Suntory, the chief blender, he then took those and blended the ratios to hit the flavor that they were looking for. So it was a collaboration between those two, because the Beam family's been around for over 200 years, and then Suntory's been around for 100 years. So you have all those traditions and experiences. So like I said, Fred knows 7th generation. The chief blender for Suntory, he's the 5th chief blender in the history of the company.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of like one of those positions that you kind of stick around for a while.
Yeah. Well, and they aged it in, like you said, there's 3 different barrels. They start with the standard oak for bourbon, and then they move to a red wine, and then sherry casks.
Yeah.
So
I should probably take a sip of this before I light up my cigar. Huh?
Yeah, I took a couple. Yeah. So it's 3 bourbons, 2 of them are finished.
3 bourbons, 2 are finished. 1 in sherry and 1 in.
Yeah, 1 sherry cask, 1 wine cask, and then 1's just the regular bourbon.
Right. No wine.
So Jim Beam's the one responsible for the initial product, and then it's Suntory that's actually blending that.
Okay. We have a whiskey question on there. Because Ray Chester says, bottle of Woodford triple distilled. What does triple distilling add to the whiskey? It actually would take away something, right?
It purifies it even more. So it's the distilling product in the process.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the whiskey after it comes from the barrel. It's just the process of distilling. A lot of the distilleries will hit 3+ times distilling, but 3 is usually around that sweet spot for a lot of the distilleries. A lot of people do it. They'll put that on vodka bottles a lot.
Irish whiskeys a lot of times as well are going to be triple distilled.
Yeah. Now,
I'm not a doctor, but I will say that I've had better experiences with triple distilled when it comes to hangovers. I don't know if there's a whole lot of science. It would make sense, right? I mean, I don't know if you're making it
like Dustin alluded to. You're taking out some of the impurities.
Yeah.
And you also got to remember though with bourbons. So if you're too high of a proof coming off the still, you've stripped a lot of the grain characteristics out of that juice. So like that's why vodka, when it comes off the still, like vodka can come off the still at 190 proof.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Bourbon's not going to come off the still at 190 proof. Otherwise, you strip away all the flavor of the corn, the rye, the malted barley.
Sure.
So it's coming off the still lower and it's going into the barrel lower than what a lot of those would.
Yeah. Now, Buffalo Trace does produce a vodka that is distilled 10 times.
Yeah.
And it's
10 times.
Fantastic.
There was an episode of Mythbusters years ago where they took vodkas and they took like the cheap bottom shelf stuff, and then they did like 2 distill, or like they ran it through charcoal filters. Like here's one run through the crap through 1 charcoal filter run, through 2, all the way through 6 runs, and then like a top shelf multiple distilled vodka. And one guy that they brought on who was a vodka expert tasted every single one of them, and they're like, which one do you think's Wish? And he nailed every single one of them. Like this one tastes like it's the cheap shit. This one tastes like.
What was his position?
I don't remember his exact position, but he was a vodka expert. So
he was a drunkard. So we also have Bubba out there. He says, from what I understand, the Suntory is a malted whiskey that is used in the blending. Do you guys?
This is not Suntory whiskey though. All this whiskey is coming. It's bourbon out of Jim Beam.
Jim Beam. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, Suntory is a Japanese whiskey company, so they do malted whiskeys,
Sure. Okay.
but that's not in this.
All right. What do you guys think of it? I mean, I think it definitely has a little bit of that sweetness. Before I lit up the Illusione cigar, definitely has that sweetness. Very pleasant, neat. I mean, like, geez, it's smooth. It's got like a almost.
It's got a lingering finish on the back of my
viscosity
throat.
is kind of like a thick, oily.
Yeah, it's like I said, the finish just kind of sits on the back of the throat, so it's a longer finish, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not a harsh finish either.
It's warm.
Yeah, 94 proof, I think, is what it said.
But I mean, it's just like it's not like hot, like heat.
Oh,
It's just like a nice warm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely warm.
And it just stays kind of in the back of your palate or in the throat. It just stays in there. It doesn't go down.
It sits for me like right on the back of my tongue, right on the tip. So a lot of that sweetness for it.
Yeah.
It really comes out.
Ryan Donald asked what percentage is 47%.
So it's gonna be 94 proof.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Steve. You get a lot of sweetness from it. A lot of honey. A lot of those fruit notes though too you get from the sherry finish too.
You get some fruit. I'm getting some like a little bit of spice. That's the warmth I think from it, but there is sweetness to it. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's not like one of those that we've had that like a cocktail, you know, like it kind of tastes like that. It's not quite like that, but it's a little bit more. I don't know.
It's very bright on the nose.
Yeah, but I don't think it is on the palate.
No, the palate's very oily.
Yeah,
initially sweet, then some spice, but on the nose, it's just very bright and aromatic.
Well, that's that. Like some of the tasting notes that I saw was, you get a lot of that bourbon up front, some of the sweetness too, but it has a Japanese whiskey style finish.
Mm-hmm.
It's a longer finish, but if you remember, we've had at least one, if not a couple, Japanese whiskeys on here. It has a lot more brighter, vibrant, almost florally notes to it.
Yeah.
Very, I don't want to say kind of similar to like an Irish whiskey, but it's as far as the floral notes.
I get what you mean. Yeah.
It has that that caramel butterscotch at the end. I don't know if you guys are getting that at all.
A little bit,
like way back. Honestly, like it just like when you're done, like it's almost like watering.
Yeah.
To me,
I get a lot of like that honey sweetness on the front, and then like you said, that caramel butterscotch in the back, in that finish. It's really good. Like you don't get a lot of like charred oakiness from it.
No. Get a little oak.
A little bit, yeah, a little oak. A lot of sweetness.
Yeah, and so anyone who knows, even a little bit about beam. So technically, in order to be a bourbon, it's got to be aged at least 2 years. Everything that goes into this is at least 4 years.
Yeah.
So like all their stuff, even the white label, is at least 4 years.
Okay.
That's just their minimum. So their minimum is double what the regulation is. So everything in here is at least 4-year-old beam whiskey.
Nice. We got
good old beam.
Freddie Bird out there saying, "What's the price in Ohio?"
$34.99,
which is not bad.
That is not bad at all.
I think it's a cool concept. I mean, this is something that from the beat. Like, so here's the marketing side of it for me. If anyone cares about it, I think it's a cool look. It's got that kind of East versus West. Like that's the swooping. I don't know what the significance of this swooping thing is. It kind of reminds me of something that was on the Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's
yin yang. The symbol in the middle of the yin yang symbol.
Sure.
A little bit.
Why not?
Yin yang.
Wave. I don't know. But it says on the front, like if I didn't know what this was, if I just am walking by this on the shelf, on the front, it just says that 2 true legends, Legent, and then 1 truly unique bourbon, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, partially finished in wine and sherry cask. You have to kind of flip the bottle to the sides to see Fred No and to see I'm not going to be able to say his name. Sure. Shinji Fukuyo. Definitely saying that wrong. I'm sorry. My apologies. And then you look at the back and then it gives the whole story. So you really have to look at this bottle. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're looking at a $35 bottle in Ohio on the shelf that it's not a bad thing. It just looks like another bottle of bourbon until you actually pick it up, look at it, and it's nothing on that front. So I don't know if that's necessarily intentional. So when it's sitting on the shelf, it doesn't really stand out. They're not trying to sell it with the no name and the beam name and the Suntory and all that stuff. It could just be something they're trying to do this side project. I don't know, but I mean, when you look at that, it just looks like another bottle of bourbon on the shelf, right? I mean, like if it's butted up against 2 other ones like that, you're not going to see anything.
Which is
else.
what it was on the shelf.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to know what you're looking for. I feel like in this one.
I think though on the flip side, yes, it just looks like another bottle of bourbon, but if you look at the bottle and the shape of the bottle, it's a little bit different than some of the others that are out there.
Yeah.
It reminds me though, and it's funny because it comes from Jim Beam, but the Baker's 7 comes in a bottle that looks exactly like this.
Yeah, probably very similar, if not the same.
It kind of reminds me of a couple weeks ago when Miguel was on. We were talking about packaging on cigars.
Okay.
Like sometimes, you have a cigar that's an absolutely shitty cigar that's in an absolutely gorgeous, fantastic box.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you have a fantastic cigar that's just in a plain Jane type of box.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have a cigar that the cigar and the box are both fantastic, and they, like Miguel was talking about with the Mil Diaz, like it's a great cigar. They wanted to have a great box to accompany that cigar.
Sure.
Without, trying to make it too flashy on the packaging and not deliver.
Sure. No, I agree. I mean, this is something that I wasn't knocking the bottle. I'm saying that if you're going to sell it by the beam and the big names that are behind this project, they didn't do a great job, if you will, thinking of a bar or liquor store. They may be looking at, like, if you look at the whole picture here, the whole bottle, you flip that around, you've got names on the side, you know what I mean? Kind of, again, looking at it, if you got north and south and then east, west, type thing, going on here, even though that's the opposite, west and east, but depending on which side of the globe you're on, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, overall, I like the cork. I like everything else about it. It's just interesting when you look at the marketing and the full scope of, hey, where are the consumers going to see this bottle for the first time, and how do they want to see it?
Right.
That might be a miss, if you will, for me, as far as the marketing. Not that that's how we're rating that, but I mean,
I think it could be, and I think if you don't know the story behind Legent, which I'll be honest,
most people don't.
Right. I didn't until tonight.
There you go.
But
me neither, and I bought the damn thing.
Right. But I think the story behind it kind of pulls even, a little bit more from it too, because you're coming from the, the historic Beam family and Centauri. So,
yeah,
you've got the marriage of those two great distilleries and companies to produce this product.
Are you guys, I mean, sipping it further, I'm getting a little bit more corn now. I don't know if it's just because some of the sweetness and everything else has gone away. I don't know if it's because I'm smoking the cigar now. I think it might be the cigar, but I'm getting a little bit more corn this time around. It's not the sweetness. I'm not getting that, what I was talking about, that butterscotch or anything like that as much. But again, that might be the cigar bringing it out. Are you guys
that could? I mean,
changing on you guys at all?
I just lit up the cigar, so I'm still working on that. And
Dustin,
I could get a little bit.
So no,
I'll get back to you on it.
Fair.
I will say
it up too.
After you initially said it, it did taste sweeter up front. I didn't really, have the time before we had to move on, to see if it changed the finish at all.
Right.
But definitely at the front, it did taste sweeter.
Okay.
And that was, me 2 puffs into the cigar.
Right. I'm right there with you.
But then again, sometimes that happens even when you're not smoking a cigar. Sometimes that happens when, you have the whiskey in a glass and it just breathes, kind of like with wine. Like it's just exposed to the air, and if you just give it time,
for sure,
in the air, it might change that flavor a little bit.
Right.
So you can take a bottle of bourbon, crack it, have a pour, and then not touch it again for a month, and a month later it might taste a little bit different.
Well, it's like
some whiskeys.
It's
will
funny
do
you
that.
mention that because Freddie just said he's seen reviews on it, and I guess it changes a lot when it airs out.
Right.
So,
in a good way, bad way, neutral.
He just said that changes.
I guess we'll find out.
Changes a lot.
All right.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not saying it. I'm noticing that it changes, and again, it could be. Again, when we do these things, everyone, like, it's not that we sample this obviously prior to, and we just drink the whiskey. Right, might do that, but this is more of like a raw review. But just drink the whiskey, and then we just smoke the cigar. I mean, I've had the cigar by itself, but doing the pairing here, it's tough because if you're not doing the exact same pairing that we are, it may be a little different, So don't take it necessarily that if you're just drinking it, like what I just said, it's going to change within the first glass or so.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the second one, like a lot of times they will. This could be just, again, smoking the F9 with it.
Oh.
But I like it. I like the combo. I'm not saying that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a unique combination. I think the cigar has a little bit of a spice to it, but it blends well with the whiskey to the point where it pulls out a lot of that sweetness initially, like you said, Nate. And then the finish just kind of dissipates in the back, and the whiskey almost just cancels out the spice that was coming from the cigar.
Right.
And it's a really neat complexity between the two that it does.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of you guys get the same thing or not.
The complexity?
Well, like as far as like the way that it changes in your palate when you go like from the cigar to the whiskey.
I think what I'm really kind of getting at too, not the corn part about it, but what's changing for me is it's not as sweet and mouth-watering the bourbon as it was in the beginning. I'm getting a little bit more of a drier palate, drier finish. And again, I actually think that's probably because I am now smoking the cigar.
Yeah.
That it's drying out a little bit. It's kind of, and maybe that'll go into the pairing at the end of it, is that, you know, for me, it's starting to kind of take away from the bourbon. I don't know about you guys. I'm interested to see what you guys think as you smoke it.
Yeah.
See if that does the same thing to you, or if it's just me getting cotton mouth because I'm talking too much.
I'll probably be able to go more into that on the second half when I light up the second cigar. Because see if that cigar goes better, goes differently with this whiskey.
It's a long road there, man. Playing the long game. Tune in at 2 hours and 15 minutes to get Nate's review on the whiskey and cigar.
Here we are halfway through part 2. Nate, are you ready
I
yet?
can light it up right now.
Send out a tweet tomorrow at 8 a.m.
And find out he's been removed from Twitter.
They don't tweet.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's good on the whiskey here. Let me switch gears over to the cigar. You guys have smoked this cigar, or you have not smoked this cigar?
I don't know that I've had the F9. I know we've featured a Illusione cigar before.
Okay.
I just don't recall which one it was.
Okay. Well, this is part of the original documents, which is Illusione is it's Dion.
Yep.
I can never say his last name. You know how to say his last name? No.
I just tagged him. What was it, like Giolotto?
Yeah, that's right, Giolotto. So Dion back in, I want to say, I forget what year it was, 2004 or something like that. Anyways, he was working in the Reno area at a Tinder Box of all places, and then decided to start his own cigar shop. And it was in the Reno, Nevada area. And he's a big guy on conspiracy type stuff. But I mean, part of this whole scheme or whole branding is kind of behind the Area 51 type stuff. Mm-hmm. So the original documents is kind of that's part of it, right? So they even have a size as the Toro size called the MJ12, which we may have featured. I can't remember.
I can't remember if it was this one or that one that we featured.
88
before.
Maybe. I think it's probably 88.
It was the 88.
88's the Robusto size.
Yep.
MJ12 is going to be the Toro size, and they actually wrapped that one in foil, which is unique. But again, kind of playing off of that theme and everything like that. F9 is called the Finesse. This is a Lonsdale. It's a 6.5 by 44. I think 6.5 by 44. So you've got, I mean, if you guys, let's see.
Was it 44?
I think it's 44 here.
48?
Yeah, 44. So you got the Lonsdale. So if you guys can, I mean, it's tough to see on camera, but it is a thinner cigar, 44 ring gauge, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is
compared to the 52 ring gauge of the Monte Cristo.
Right. So this is going to be something where, again, it's a size that's not for everyone, but it seems to be more of a quote cigar smoker, nerd type of a size. Lonsdales are definitely popular, Panatellas, things like that, where you have the thinner ring gauge, but it doesn't always sell all that well from the retail side. But this one has been popular for quite some time. I want to say it was rated 91 this size in one of the magazines. But the original documents, the blends have really been really well received. I mean, this is definitely his original stuff. I mean, the story that I heard was that his cigars were doing so well, kind of like a house brand, if you will, that then he just kind of kept expanding it. He was with the Raíces Cubanas factory for a long time. And then from my understanding, he has now since transitioned everything over mainly to Casa Fernandez, which is now Aganorsa Leaf. But he's got his hands on it. I mean, Dion is going to be one of those guys that he doesn't just do it from the shop. He's going down to Miami. He's going down to Nicaragua on a regular basis. He's coming out of the Tabsa factory, which is going to be one of Aganorsa Leaf's Nicaraguan factory. And they have a factory in Miami where we used to work with the BS Gold through them. So that's where we actually blended the BS Gold originally through them. But this is going to be, it's pretty cool.
When you were talking about the F9 and MJ12, is it the same blend?
To my knowledge, yeah. So
okay,
this
so
is going to be
different sizes.
Yeah, this is a Corojo wrapper. So it's a Corojo 99, but they call it a Rosado wrapper. So that's going to be like the shade of it. But it's Corojo seed wrapper. And then it's going to be a blend of Criollo 98 and Corojo 99. So that's pretty much standard, in my opinion, for a more natural or sun-grown, whatever you want to call it. But that's going to be coming out of the Aganorsa factory. Those are their tobaccos. So he's using all of their tobacco, which is their big boys are the Corojo 99, the Criollo 98, and the Corojo 99. I mean, he says it's a AAA grade Corojo Rosado wrapper. So that Corojo wrapper leaf that Aganorsa leaf uses, I mean, it's in my opinion, some of the best in the industry. I mean, them and Plasencia probably are two of my favorites as far as who's growing some of the Corojo and Criollo stuff.
I'd have to agree with you. I mean, this smokes very well. And I remember the 88 too, the little Robusto, I was a big fan of that as well.
Sure.
It was so good. I mean, this has a nice kind of creaminess to it, but it does pack a little bit of spice. But it's not a ton. I don't know what you guys get from the retro hail. I can't do it. So
you can't do it.
Nope.
We'll learn you.
You'll learn. All right. I'm working on it. The day will come.
I do find though that out of because I've smoked the 88, the F9, and the MJ12. I've smoked all three of those, and I do prefer the F9. I do prefer this size of that blend over the other two.
Okay.
Now I will say, you were talking about the Corojo wrapper. Not my favorite flavor on this Corojo, as some of the other Corojo cigars I've had, but it is very good.
Okay.
It's not my favorite, but it's good.
Not Nate's favorite, so there's that.
Like when you
take it as you wish.
If like my favorite Corojo tobacco is coming out of Aroa's factory and farm.
Okay, so Honduran.
Yeah,
I got it now.
But I'm not completely comparing the two because Nicaraguan Honduran. I'm just saying Corojo in general.
Yeah,
I do prefer what Christian's doing over some of Now, granted, I've never had a lot of Plasencia, their name brand stuff.
Sure.
So I would love to have some of the Plasencia Corojos to be able to compare to this and to Christian's.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so this one, so for those that don't know, the Corojo 99, when you hear that, that's going to be, from my understanding, the seed strain that was originally coming over from Cuba at that point. The 99 batch or crop was going to be one of the best, and so that's what they've stuck with. Criollo 98. The reason it's called 98 is from 1998 as well. So again, those are those signifying years there.
And that's just the seed from that year?
Correct. Yeah, okay. It's not going to be aged from that year. No, it's the seed. So those are some of the best. And to Nate's point, the Aroa stuff, so Christian Aroa, they brought over to Honduras. Their claim to fame, according to the Aroa company, is that they have some of the purest Corojo from Cuba, even before. That's why 99, if you guys have listened before, there was what they say a blue mold scare that then even in Cuba, they had to do some sort of a hybrid through the farming to have some sort of a resiliency to the blue mold.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why, when they use that 99, the Criollo 98, this is before the Cuban blue mold. And then they altered the tobacco seed slightly just to have that resiliency to that mold scare. So it depends who you ask. If people are like big Cuban fans, like, no, it's not, it's not a big of a deal. Talk to like Christian Aroa, huge deal. Talk to these guys in Nicaragua, huge deal that this is like the pure, tobacco seed strain from when things were the best. Great yields, great years, great, all that stuff. So
were they using the 99 seed because it was the last one before the blue mold, or that's just the favorite that they'd had?
I couldn't tell you if that was just a triumphant year or if it just was the last one that they had before, like that had made its way over.
Gotcha.
When we were in Cuba, we were learning about, I think it was a Habano 2010 or something like that even the Cuban government had done. And I don't quote me on the year. Shannon, if you want to crack that, you can. Don't quote me on the year for the Habano, but it was a seed that they actually, and I think I've told this on the podcast before, that they were you couldn't actually reproduce it. It's a one and done, right?
It doesn't bloom any seeds.
Correct. Yeah. So it was
have
something
the ability
that
to pollinate.
Well, it was something that they did just so that the fact that if it did happen to get smuggled out of there, you got one and done. You can't actually produce a long-term product outside of that.
So let me ask you this. I don't know. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it or not, Steve. But so you take the 99 seed and you plant your crops. Can you take the seeds from that, and would that then be still a 99 seed, or would that be?
Yeah, because it's the
same.
Think of it
genetic.
like the product, right? Yeah, it's the product, right? So you can. That was what the point was, is that you can have it reproduce. You can have the seeds coming off of the plant. Yeah, exactly.
I just don't know if it'd still be labeled or considered that same 99 seed, or if it would change.
So they're gonna have some plants.
It is.
They're gonna have some plants that they allow that flower to bloom, so that way they can get those seeds.
Yeah,
and then most of the plants, they're going to top it to where it doesn't
cross pollinate.
It doesn't. Yeah, no, to where it doesn't bloom. So that way the nutrients and everything are going into the tobacco leaves. Other ones, they'll let them bloom and develop seeds. So that way they can then use those seeds
in a very controlled type of atmosphere, if you will.
Yeah.
I think it's got some spice. To answer your question from 5 minutes ago, in the retrohale, I think it's got a little bit of spice to it. A little, like, not pepper, but it's got. I'd say this is medium body. I don't know about you guys. We're good. All right. See, I like this cigar. I like Aganorsa leaf tobacco. Again, that's why we used it in the BS Gold originally. That's not why we changed from them, is to get better tobacco or anything like that. It was just I think that anything that's coming out of their farms and out of their factory is going to be some of the best Nicaraguan tobacco, and there's others out there as well. But I think if you see the Aganorsa leaf name on something, including their own product, I think you're going to be really pleased with what you're smoking.
I'd have to agree. I really love tobacco from Aganorsa and Plasencia. I'm a big Nicaraguan tobacco fan myself, so those two factories really stand out for me the most. Even more so than the factories from the Aurora family, or some of the others out there. I just have always been drawn to that personally.
Sure. What do you guys think? Well, where are we at here?
I get kind of I get more of like food or baking spice out of it. It's not like a pepper.
No, you're spot on.
It's more baking spice, almost like
cinnamon.
I don't know about cinnamon. Kind of a ginger spice to it.
Okay.
But then it's one of those kind of like when we talked about a couple weeks ago with the Mil Diaz. So there's a difference between the spice on the palate and the spice on the retrohale. This has a lot more spice through the retrohale than it does on the palate. On the palate, it's a very subtle baking spice more, but through the retrohale, it actually bumps up that spice level a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think there is a little bit of a drier finish on this, and maybe it's me tonight. But,
yeah,
I mean,
it's not just you.
Getting it.
Yeah,
it kind of, it's not making you salivate at all. It's drying out your palate.
Yeah. Which, depending on who you are, what you're drinking with it, I mean, you may or may not like that. I think by itself, it's all right with this bourbon, and we'll get to that here in the pairing rating. But it's not the same smoking experience that I've had typically from some of these products, the original documents from Illusione. It's interesting when we went down there, and we were basically we were going to be working on what turned out to be the BS Silver, but that went through Espinosa instead. Mm-hmm. And we were also doing a line. We had just done the 6x54 BS Gold, and we did that kind of from afar, and then we went down to their Miami factory to do the other sizes, and we had like 4 or 5 different sizes. So we basically went down there. We're going to work on a new blend and also do a line extension on the BS Gold. What I found interesting is that he also Paul Palmer had shared with us a couple other products from their stuff. And what's interesting is that with all their tobacco, they have a lot of different tobacco, but overall, those are some Laurel pours there.
Note to self: don't give Nate the bottle and slide your glass over.
Well, you got to remember,
number 2 of 8.
A Glencairn holds less than Steve's Rocks glass.
That's
okay. You're testing the limits there. But what's interesting is it's okay. It's okay. Just count that as 4.
Yeah.
What I was saying was that what was interesting is that when you have the grasp of all that tobacco out there, is that you can tweak it enough. A lot of similarities, I feel like sometimes in a good/negative way, but depending on what you think. But there's only so much you can do with it. But there are enough little changes when you're doing this that I've smoked a couple of them from Cas Fernandez at the time. That when I was looking, I was like, I don't know, we're partial to it, but I like the BS Gold more. I like the way it finishes. I like the sweetness of it or the saltiness. Like it was like different flavors. And then you look at it, you're like, well, on paper, it's more or less the same blend, Corojo 99 and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But so this one tonight is hitting a little dry for me, but not dry as far as the humidity of the cigar, but just the flavor, the way it's hitting my palate and everything else. So for what it's worth there. Ian says 8-finger pours cost triple.
Is there any specific reasons as to why why one cigar might dry out your palate versus another one that doesn't?
I don't know the technical answer to that, but I would just assume that it's going to be basically where you're taking it off the plants. You know what I mean? If you have more Seco or Viso, you know what I mean? Like it's just, you have more Ligero and something, or, it's just the different leaves that they're using from the different plants. It's just the blend. Okay. I mean, honestly, that's it. It's just the ingredients to the recipe.
I was asking that for listeners that may not. Yeah. Because there are some people, and gosh, you see them all the time in cigar shops. They'll smoke a cigar, and it might make them salivate. So like the opposite of this cigar, where it's kind of drying out the palate.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of makes them salivate a little bit, and they sit outside on the sidewalk and just constantly spit.
If you're a cigar smoking spitter, you're doing that on every cigar.
Okay.
Maybe more on the ones that salivate, but I know plenty of people that when they smoke cigars, they spit. And it could be any of the 500-600 SKUs that we have in the shop, and you hand them any of them, they're going to be like,
seen them spit into the ashtray at the shop.
Yeah. It's just good manners. It's good manners.
Yeah.
Better that than the floor.
Is it?
Well,
I got to clean. Well, the floor, yeah, but even the sidewalk is not very good. But
yeah, no. I've had a couple occasions where we've had to, take a gallon of water or the mop bucket, just fill it up with water and wash off the sidewalk.
Yeah. Public place there, people. Yep. So cigar shop etiquette: if you need to spit, ask for a cup or bring your own or what have you, or just swallow it.
Yeah, there you go. It's a good plan.
Spitters are for quitters.
All right. This is the time before we go off the rails there too much there and get into innuendos or what have you, as it says on the captions about swallowing and all this stuff. That's perfect. So this is where we rate the cigar or the whiskey, the cigar, the pairing out of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. Who wants to start? Either of you guys, not me. Not it.
Nate brought the bottle.
Nate, go ahead.
So on the whiskey, I'm gonna be in that like 7.5 to 8.
Okay, so 7.75.
I'll give it an 8.
8.
I'll give it an 8. It's very enjoyable, very smooth. Has good balance between the sweetness up front, a little bit of spice in the back. Not like a pepper.
Right.
Kind of like with a cigar, more like a baking spice. And I like the texture of the whiskey. The oiliness of it. I think at $35, it's a great bottle. I like the story behind it. I think it's very pleasant. Cigar, I'm going to do just a little bit less at a 7.5.
Okay.
While this is my favorite size of, between the 88, the F9, and the MJ12, while this is my favorite size, it's not necessarily my favorite blend.
Okay.
And
from Illusione or just in general?
In general.
Okay.
Now I will say, while I do prefer this size out of the 3 that I mentioned, it's not necessarily the size I would normally go to, just because with it being a thinner ring gauge, it's not as long of a smoke. So like if you're looking for a longer smoke, MJ12, you're looking for something a little shorter, this or the 88 maybe.
I know we're talking, but I mean, we've been at this for almost 40 minutes.
It does burn slow.
There it is.
But I think that would happen with the other two sizes as well.
Yeah, maybe.
It should.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the same blend, it should burn roughly the same rate. But no, it's good. There's just nothing about the cigar that wows me. It's just a good, enjoyable smoke.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that's really going to stand out.
Gotcha. How about the pairing?
Pairing. I'm going to do a 7 on the pairing because I think the cigar hurts the whiskey.
Okay.
You get because it's drying out because this cigar dries out your palate a little bit. You don't necessarily get a lot of those flavors from the whiskey like we did when we first started and we were just sipping the whiskey a couple times.
Yeah.
I think the cigar hurts the flavor of the whiskey. Thankfully, the whiskey's got some viscosity to it that'll reverse that. But your tongue and palate just constantly going back and forth between dry and not dry.
Sure. All right, Dustin, how about you? Whiskey cigar pairing.
So for me, well, I'd have to agree with you, Nate, on the cigar. I give it a solid 7.5. I think it's a really good cigar. It smokes very well. It's got a good flavor. The spice is really nice. It's not too much. It's subtle enough that it's there to add that a little bit of complexity, but there's just not a whole lot more to it than that. But I think, it is something I would eventually come back to. Just, maybe, try it again and, give it another shot. But I do like the size. It's a nice kind of change up from the normal Toros and larger cigars, which I do enjoy as well.
Yeah.
But I think for the size, I may venture towards something else that, I may enjoy better at the particular price point. For the whiskey, I'd probably give it a 7. Personally, I think it does drink really well. It's got a lot of nice sweetness. The finish is really nice. But I feel like it's just lacking a little bit.
Lacking what?
A little more boldness, I guess, if you want. And maybe that's just
you want more boldness out of the whiskey. Okay, I got you.
A little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for that $35 price point, you're putting it up there with your Elijah Craig's and your Four Roses small batch and, things along those lines. And I think this is a great whiskey for, maybe a little bit closer to summertime. That's lighter, sweeter. Maybe put it over a couple rocks. I think it could drink pretty smoothly.
Okay.
But for me to drink neat, I think if you were to put this up with, a few of those other bottles in the same price point, I would still lean towards the others.
Okay.
I think.
How about the pairing? Hang on.
Sorry.
Easy there, Trigger.
Sorry, jumped the gun.
Yeah, you already went. You had your time. Get out of there. Get out of the batter's box there. He's not up yet.
For the
Dustin?
pairing, I give it a solid 7.5 though.
Okay.
I think the two of them together kind of give it a nice balance.
Mm-hmm.
The cigar, you get that spice from it. When you take a drink of the whiskey after it, you get a lot of that sweetness right up front, so it mellows out the spice.
Okay.
But the finish of the whiskey kind of takes over at the end of it. So I think the two do go pretty well together, though. So anyone out there, by all means, give it a shot. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised.
Nate, what did you want to say there?
I was going to say when Dustin had mentioned, it's not as bold the whiskey as what he's thinking. Not because Dustin likes barrel proofs, but
he does like barrel proofs.
I do.
Yeah, but I think it's because that's the Suntory side of this whiskey, because they're blending it to make it a more delicate flavor, which is what you'll typically get from a lot of your Japanese whiskeys. Okay. It's not going to be that punch you in the mouth, cask strength type of flavor.
Yeah,
right.
I got you. So for me, whiskey on its own, I would say 8.5. I thought this was very good when I started off on a fresh, palate, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did have a cigar. I was smoking a CLE Prieto kind of before the podcast, you know what I mean? But more or less a fresher palate when I started this. Now, if I take a break from the cigar, if you guys take a break from the cigar for just like set those down while I'm doing the radio and then take a sip of the whiskey, see if some of the sweetness comes back. And it's not as dry.
Okay.
Not to have you guys not smoke while I'm talking, but it's just because I set it down for a little bit. I think so 8.5 on the whiskey. I think it's a unique flavor. I think this is kind of cool. $35 anymore for a bottle of bourbon, for a fifth of bourbon here in the state of Ohio at the very least. is a very competitive price. There is a smaller and smaller group of bottles that you can get, at least in the state of Ohio, for under 40, in my opinion. Everything keeps climbing up. If it gets popular, it climbs up. If it's something new, has a celebrity behind it, we talked about this on the podcast, it climbs up. You're at $40 to $50 is your entry level. So for them to be able to come in at $35, I think that's something that is going to give me a little bit more of a higher rating, in my opinion.
Do you think it's because they're part of a giant company?
And for sure.
They can sit there and put this out at $35, and they're
good. And they've got so much at their disposal. To my knowledge, is that having that much to your disposal, you don't even have to use some of the finer or the best stuff you got, especially when you're blending it. You got two of these like masterminds behind it, right? So you can like shoot one of those barrels could be shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can play with it.
Let's just do this.
Yeah,
we got. What are we gonna do with all this stuff over here? Like, well, let's finish it in wine barrels. Let's do that. What are we gonna do with that? I don't know. We'll just put in another product and we'll combine that with something else. Well, okay. Well, it's not quite there. Like, well, let's add a third. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how it all works, but I think it's definitely doable when you got these brains behind it and all the mass amounts of potential products you can make. So I think it's cool. And I also will say I like the education as people that are getting into bourbons. You look at this now, all of a sudden you learn a little bit more about the West side, and you learn a little bit more about Fred No and who that is. And then you realize it's like, oh, this is a Jim Beam product, even though it doesn't say Jim Beam anywhere on it. I mean, even on the bottle, you've got, produced and bottled by Legent Distilling. So they may even have a different spot that they're doing this. I don't even know. It's interesting. So that's why I give it an 8.5. The cigar on its own, I think, is going to be an 8. I've always liked, again, I like the Aganorsa leaf tobacco. I like what Dion's done. I like the overall flavor. I agree with what Nate said, that it's an okay cigar. I mean, it's a good cigar. It's not anything wowing, but I don't think it's the intent. I think this is a classic, just true tobacco.
What's the cigar run? We didn't talk about that.
It's around, I think for us, it's around 11.
Okay.
So it's a little north of 10. I don't know what the MSRP is, but in Ohio on the shelf, you're going to be around 11 or so for this size. And so again, the tricky part for those that aren't as familiar with Illusione products, he has different lines, but the original documents, it's a little bit confusing because F9 finesse, that's the Lonsdale size. The 88 with the same kind of white band on there is the same blend, Robusto size. It's kind of like Ashton puts different names on all their stuff. So it's not, like you have the
Magnum,
Corona, but you have
the
Magnum,
double
Magnum. You have, things like that. You look at the VSGs, you have all these different, enchantment and all this Sorcerer. Yeah. So, that's something that you can remember when you're looking at those. If it has a similar band, the white band, it'll be F9, MJ12, 88. I forget. 888 is another one, which is, I think,
Lancero.
Yeah, exactly. So, 8 on that. I think it's a good cigar. The pairing, I'm going to say, is a 7 for me. I think this is something that if you're doing both together, and if you guys want to take a sip of the whiskey now and see if any of that has kind of mellowed out, so you get, I don't know, see if there's any more sweetness back to it, and say yes or no. You don't have to. Has it changed it all back? Is it still the same for you guys?
I think some of the sweetness has gone away a little bit. I get a little more caramel.
Okay. So let's bring back some of the original sensations, right?
Yeah, a little more of that caramel, kind of still that longer finish.
Yeah. Which for me went away when I was smoking the cigar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You getting that too, Nate?
It's weird. I think some of the notes that I'm getting are actually a little bit different from the first.
Okay.
But are better than when I was drinking it while smoking the cigar.
You're getting the finish again. You're not as dried out. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying. So that's where I say that the pairing for me is going to be more in that 7 range, because it does alter the drinking and smoking experience in a detrimental way, to a point where some people may like it, but I think for me, back and forth, it's not quite the same. It's not as good.
Well, and it just goes to show, like, we don't plan ahead and prep these pairings when we figure out what we're going to drink. I mean, literally on my way here, I stopped by a liquor store, bought 3 bottles, and came into the garage and was like, hey, which one of these you want to do?
Yeah, what are you thinking, right?
And that's how we figured out what we were going to drink.
So, I mean, that's where I'll say, I mean, we don't always have it. I mean, and again, to you guys, it might be different. That's why I wanted to do that little quick experiment, and I'm glad it did kind of impact the way that you guys are enjoying the whiskey, maybe a little bit more without the cigar. I think that was it's not a reset, but I think it's something that is interesting to me that as I was listening to you guys, I set the cigar down and took another sip after, a brief amount of time. And I was like, wait a second, now it's starting to have that finish back. It's starting to have that honey, caramel, like all those, like the flavors that I didn't
because
have.
your palate's no longer dry.
Exactly. So with that,
it's a good science experiment, Steve.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Good job.
It's going to mix it up a little bit.
Thanks, Bill Nye. For that, part 1, guys, thank you very much. Check out, we had the, again, Legent Bourbon coming out of the Beam Suntory area there in a matter of speaking. Masterminds. We had the Illusione, which thanks to Tinder Box at Easton for providing the Illusione F9. Check that one out as well. Columbus, Ohio is where Tinder Box at Easton is. They do ship as well. They've got another one of our sponsors is the BS Cigar Company. So that's going to be the gold and silver. That's exclusive through the Tinder Box at Easton. So you can check them out either through social media, BS Cigar Company, or you can always contact Tinder Box at Easton, and they'll either ship it out, or if you're in the area, you're stopping by Columbus for any reason, check out Tinder Box at Easton at the Easton Town Center. So, and also Altadis USA, thank you very much. We're going to be lighting up the Monte Cristo Espada sometime. Like I said, these cigars are not even like yours is maybe half gone there, Dustin. Yeah. But I mean, we still got a ways to go on the Illusione. But the next one is going to be through Altadis, which is the Monte Cristo Espada, which is definitely one of my favorites from the Monte Cristo line in the recent years.
And that's coming out of Placencia that you talked about earlier.
Absolutely. So, and also, guys, patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. This is something, got a $5 tier, $10 tier, $25 tier. Nate is not taking off his clothes, but he's showing off the t-shirt. I do have finally an update. We are going to be doing through the Tinder Box. This is all kind of related. I've got another t-shirt on, which is something that's going to go on sale by the end of this week. Pre-order, which is the BS newest one. It says, when the world hands you some BS, light it up. That's our 2020 shirt for obvious reasons. So that's going to be something that's going to be available. Stay tuned on social media. You guys, if you're in the area, it's going to be a lot easier. But if you're not, we will be able to ship them out. You're going to have to the end of this month for that shirt and another one, actually that and the hoodie through Tinder Box at Easton and the BS Cigar Company. And then in the meantime, that's when I'll be placing the order for more podcast apparel, different colors and some of that. Ian, if you're still tuned in, which I assume you are, we'll get you a 3X, maybe in a couple colors for you. But yeah, we'll be doing that. So if you guys haven't done patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast yet, $5, it takes 6 months to get it. $10 takes 3. And then at 25, you're going to be getting the next round. So if you guys want to get in, you can cancel at any time, but it definitely helps us out. And we appreciate all of you that have stuck with us. Definitely makes this worthwhile to continue doing. We're 151 episodes in, so we appreciate all the support. Hopefully we can increase that. I'm bugging Josh Bentley from Altadis to get us some more swag to send you guys as well. And just trying to sort it all out. I think 2021 is going to be a good year for the podcast and for all the swag and everything else. So finally coming together. 2020 was a big kick in the nuts for a lot of people. So myself included in the podcast as far as getting all this stuff done and kind of working with our printer and everything else. Like our printer actually had to go back to work at his previous type of work because he had started this company. And then all the schools where he was doing all this stuff for the uniforms and all the swag for the teams and the schools. Well, they're not in session. So, yeah, a lot of moving parts there, a lot of broken parts there, as we know. But, guys, thank you very much. Part 1. Stay tuned if you're on the live. We're going to take a quick intermission. If you guys are listening to the audio, check out Part 2. And make sure you guys share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff on not only Facebook, on YouTube. Let's build up the YouTube presence if you guys could help us out on that. And then all the audio stuff like iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Luminary, countless others. So, guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday, episode 151, part 1. Stay tuned for Beyond the BS, where we're going to kind of get all the Bourbon and BS community kind of suggestions. So, guys, thank you very much. Have a good week.
Cheers.
Ian says, hum. He meant, Anyways, yeah. Cool.
Cool story, bro.
Cool. All right, I'm going to pull up some of these things. You guys need to hit the head at all?
Nope, did that before we started.
I did too, but I'm getting old.
I got more gray than you.
My prostate.
I was gonna make a prostate joke, but
my prostate.
I
gotta pull up some of these things.
You mentioned hoodie. Is that the Nicaraguan hoodie?
Yeah, the blue one.
I'm in.
So the way it's going to be, if anyone's interested, so these T-shirts are going to be $25 a piece.
Okay.
Okay, this one, and then we're gonna do that red with silver. It's gonna be the BS and it says focus on the silver lining. For those that are Buckeye fans, they're kind of like the Buckeye shirt. If you're not Buckeye fans, it's just red.
With gray lettering.
With gray lettering. That has nothing to do with OSU. If you're not interested in OSU, so
It is not licensed whatsoever.
certainly not.
We don't have that kind of money.
Oh God, no. And then we're gonna do the blue and white Nicaragua BS hoodie as well.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
will be $40. So
Okay.
it's something that in the past we've done it where we're making like $3 a shirt, and then if something goes wrong, we have to like make another one for someone. We just like lost everything. So we're like, it's like everyone's buying T-shirts anymore for like $30. It's a zip up hoodie, yeah.
What other colors are you doing for the 3X? Because at this point, like we should just.
So
like,
when I'm
if
doing
you
this,
do like 3 colors for Ian, like just send them all to Ian. Ian's been patient enough.
I
like,
know.
Just send all 3.
So I like for the pour one more, light up another. We'll figure it out together. We'll probably do the Patty's Day one we were talking about.
Yeah.
Which is the green with the black. And then it's toss up. I like the blue, but I think we'll probably do the reverse one of what you have on, which is what I had on yesterday in the shop, which was this color shirt with it's kind of more like your hoodie there. It's that color shirt with the gray.
Yeah.
So it's like the reverse of the
regular
Yeah.
podcast shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the black with the gray,
Yeah.
which I think is sharp.
Yeah, it pops
yeah.
pretty well. I'm trying to pull up these the
Because
topic
the
suggestions.
black shirt fades a little bit less than the black lettering.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's good.
What are you getting ready to ask me?
Butane.
I don't have butane, but
There's butane up there. All right, where is this at here? Did I put that on?
thanks for getting up and getting that, Daniel.
He pointed you in the right direction.
I don't even know if there's anything in there.
There's some inside in the in Frank's old room.
That'll work.
Come on. Whoa. Easy there.
Getting a bit low.
Yeah, definitely. Legent, here you go.
Bobby Crow, we do not have uniforms at the Tinder Box. You would know that if you came in there because I remember like sometimes guys wear T-shirts, some guys wear jerseys, although not as much anymore.
Are these shirts the new Tinderbox uniforms? No, I just basically, with all the prototypes, I basically just created a whole wardrobe for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
A bunch of prototypes.
Yeah, Steve bought the shirt and he's like, hey, let me try this color.
Yeah,
I'll wear it to the shop and see what people think.
Let me just, customize my clothes.
Yeah.
I do want to say also, guys, anyone listening, guys and girls, I've got a handful here of from some people as far as some of the stuff we're going to talk about in the, what did I call this here? Covering some ground.
Okay.
But that's just what I mean. We're going to be handling some of these. Jake, who used to be a part of the podcast, he's one of the guys, admins on the community page.
He had a few topics.
He has 5 different ones here.
Yeah.
Ray Cheshire's got one. Nate says Q&A. That Q&A, anyone that's out there, and I'll ask you guys to kind of keep an eye out for these as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, just see if we see any of these come across. If you guys have anything, we're going to try to address any of the kind of Q&A or topics you want to do. Just kind of play it by ear here.
Bobby Crow says shouldn't make a BS workout clothes.
Yeah, T-shirts. All right, I don't know. I'm not gonna do like dry fit or like your onesies or anything like that, Bobby. We're gonna got T-shirts. All right, you can work out in a T-shirt. Buddy.
Pretty sure he was hoping for a onesie.
I think he was hoping for
Tank.
pair of gym shorts. No, a
Leggings.
singlet. He was hoping for a singlet, a BS singlet.
Not doing it.
I know that's a lot of BS.
Does everyone in the garage know what a singlet is?
Yes.
That's what wrestlers wear. Yeah, it's called a singlet.
Whoever wants to wear it, it's a singlet. I mean, you don't have to wrestle in it. You can do whatever you want. You can
Yeah.
hang out, watch a movie, whatever you want to do. You guys ready?
Good God.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
all right. Baby BS clothes. I like that idea.
I
Nice.
dig it.
BS baseball tee again. Yes. Something different, Freddie. BS baseball tee. We do have some of those. That'll probably be in the next couple months, though. All right. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. I'm Steve Crane. I'm joined by Nate Hale and Dustin Bovey at the table, and joined by all of our live studio audience, as well as the Facebook Live and YouTube Live. If you guys have any questions going into this, that's kind of what we're doing. We're covering some ground and beyond the BS tonight. We had a guest that we had to reschedule due to COVID reasons. And so this was last minute. So this is one of those episodes that we kind of put it out to the Bourbon and BS community page and the podcast page on Facebook. And you guys, if you guys want to be a part of the community page, it's Bourbon and BS community page. Just find it on Facebook, ask for approval, and then I will approve you. Pretty easy. But I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. Check them out. We're smoking the Illusione F9 from them. Thank you very much, Brian and Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. Also, Altadis USA. Josh Bentley does all the legwork to get us some stuff like the Monte Cristo Espada. Their Altadis is Monte Cristo, Romeo Julieta, H. Upman, and countless others. So check them out as well. They got some great products coming from all over the world, different factories, different blenders. And also BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver are in stock at the Tinder Box at Easton. You guys can find them there or contact them, and we can ship some out to you as well. Patreon.com/BourbonandBS podcast. That's going to be where you guys can actually support the show, whether it be monthly, a one-time contribution. We were just talking about it in the intermission, and also towards the end as well. T-shirts, swags coming. 2021, I think it's going to be a fun year for Patreon. .com/BourbonBS podcast. There's a $5 tier, a $10 tier, and a $25 tier. Those are just kind of the benchmarks there, but that gets you swag quicker than others. So and it'll ask you for, I think, your address, and also if you guys want to throw in shirt size or message us on that, so we have that, or I'll try to contact you as needed. So tonight on Beyond the BS, we're still drinking the Regent Bourbon from Beam Suntory, which has been check out part one. If you guys haven't, if you're on the audio, you haven't watched the beginning or listened to the part one, we go over that bourbon and also the cigar and the pairing as well. So we're going to be, like I said, covering some ground. This is going to be something that's going to go to the table. You guys in the garage, you guys have a mic as well if you want to chime in, or if you have any questions for us. But I just kind of start out, and these are some vague things from Jake and Ray. So I'm just going to throw one out. Just throw it out.
Just whip it out there.
I'm not going to whip anything out.
Calm
down.
That was a reference to the movie
down.
Get Smart.
We know.
Jeez.
Reference. All right.
It's a children's show. For fuck's sake.
I was going to say, don't we
Why
have
there's a
explicit
fucking
warning?
explicit sign on it.
Let's start with this. Nate, thinking before speaking was one of the ones.
Oh,
Nate Hale.
I resent that remark, or
You
resemble,
resemble it.
whatever.
You resemble it. Yeah.
Probably resent it too. So thinking before speaking, this is going to be, again, this is a little looser here. We don't really know exactly what Jake, and I don't know if Jake's on tonight or not, but thinking before speaking. Nate, what do you think of that topic?
Something that in my professional career I have had to deal with and struggle with,
How so?
because initially when maybe things don't go your way, you tend to react.
Okay.
And just like the first thing that comes to your head, you just blur it out. And then later on, you're like, probably could have handled that differently, or said it differently, phrased it a little bit different, still got the same point across.
Okay.
Maybe I should have taken a couple steps back, had a few deep breaths, and and then
Sure.
thought about the words a little bit.
45 seconds ago.
I think a lot of times thinking before speaking, also, you're talking about the knee-jerk reaction. We've talked about this before when we were talking about active listening. A lot of the times I feel as though people will they don't necessarily think before they speak, especially in a conversation, because we talked about how often and how common it is for people to just already know what they want to say before the other person already finishes their statement. There's not those things. We talked about the active listening. That was a great episode with Bourbon and
It was
Blondes.
a phenomenal
Fucking
episode.
love that episode. I learned a lot. It was very, very pertinent to me with what some of the stuff I had been going through this last year. So it was, when you're thinking before speaking, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to completely stop, walk away. Hey, let me get back to you tomorrow about that. But sometimes there's nothing wrong. And sometimes it actually, I feel like, will come across as you are paying more attention to the person that you're speaking with or the situation. You say, hang on a second. And what I heard you say is this. And some of the exercises we talked about as far as conversational skills, to kind of say, well, give me a moment here. Let me kind of digest that. And it's not about, like, sometimes in sales, those are techniques so that you can win what you're trying to win. You're playing the game. You're manipulating the conversation. No, this is the genuine side of it, is that you want to think before you speak.
There was a point last week when Mike McGovern was on where you had been talking about something and then you directed it to me, and I really hadn't thought of or formulated what I wanted to say or how I wanted to say it. I was thinking.
Yeah.
So when you're like, Nate, what do you think? I was like, I don't really have anything right now. And you're like, oh, are you not paying attention? No, I was paying attention.
Playing Angry Birds again?
No.
Okay.
I was paying attention. I just hadn't figured out how I wanted to say what was going through my mind.
Yeah.
So then I asked you, I was like, all right, what was the question again? The whole time you were asking the question again, I'm actually formulating
right.
how I want to say what my answer was, rather than just saying the first thing that came off my head and it not making sense, or just, saying a bunch of gibberish.
I think the other piece is a lot of people will talk out of emotion versus taking that moment to actively listen. We've talked about that as well when it comes to just communication in general. It's like Victoria Box says, are you listening or just waiting to talk? I think that kind of plays into it as well, because if you're actively listening, you're actually listening and you're waiting to respond versus waiting to talk at the person instead of just talking with.
Yeah, Ray puts it on there too. Something that in this technological age is much less utilized. Thinking before you speak. What I'll equate this. All right, so let's bring them together here. How many of you guys have, like, say you're typing a response text message, right?
Oh, I know where you're going.
Do you? Where am I going?
Go ahead. I was giving an example.
So what we were just saying,
an example
about how you wait until the person's done talking before you speak.
It was
What's that?
It was an illustration.
Yeah, right.
We got the picture.
My point is, it's that's, I think, a very good example of it, where when you type something out, you like read something, you're like, you get kind of heated up or whatever. You think you already know what you're going to say. You type something out and then you're like, delete. And then you do that. And the other person, if you're texting, they're like looking at it. And you fucking 3 dots, man. Are you going to send something? I mean, you have seen 3 dots. Is this a glitch? That's a
and then it disappears.
That's an annoying
like,
thing too.
What the fuck?
When you're waiting on a response for someone, like you put something out there, you ask a question, and you see the 3 dots.
A lot of times, someone will accidentally hit a key.
No one can hear you.
Oh, I know.
And just they're like,
yeah, they can't hear you on the mic here. Yeah. So I think that's a good the way to bring that together as far as the technology side of it. Sometimes you need to just let it sit, read it again, or listen again in your mind and think about what the person said before you just jump off.
I felt important, might delete later.
I had one example of that really stands out was a few years ago when my team was they were hiring a new manager
at work. Yeah.
At work. And I work for AEP, and they were hiring a new manager, and I felt the need, because I'm the most tenured person on the team. I felt the need to put in my 2 cents to the manager that was actually going to be doing the interviews and hiring someone. And I typed out an email, and then I mentioned to one of my sales reps that I was typing an email about that. And he goes, wait, before you send that, send it to me first. And I was like, oh, okay. And I sent it to him. He goes, do not send, because this was Friday at like 4:30, 5 o'clock. He goes, do not send that Friday at 5 o'clock, because your weekend, you're going to be thinking about it all weekend long and regretting hitting that send button. So I did. I waited and then came back on Monday, reformulated how I wanted to phrase everything, and then ended up having an actual one-on-one conversation with that manager about what I was looking for in a manager.
Yeah,
because of my experience, and I was the only person that was on the team at that point for more than 2 years.
Yeah.
Here's what I think our team needs. And I just needed to convey that a little bit better than what my initial email would have conveyed.
So a little bit of patience there. I do like Ian out here. He put it out there, so I'm going to throw it up there. That lack of editing in a response is responsible for my divorce. I am going to say this. That lack of editing is not responsible for your divorce. I'm sure there were other issues there, but it could maybe have not helped. Let's put it that way. It's not responsible necessarily. I don't know the situation, but I can only assume that there were other bigger issues there.
Yeah.
That you were deling with that this did not aid. Well. It did not aid it. Maybe it did. Things worked out. So there you go, Ian. And the way she took it is no way the way I meant it. But without the spoken word, it did come across as crass. So again, if you're dealing with things that could end in a divorce, maybe call instead of text. Also, would be another good communication thing. I want to branch off on this. This was kind of one of my things. So today, I've been doing the old man walks, and for those that follow on, I do it on the community page sometimes, but definitely on my personal page. And sometimes it's just enjoy your day, and other times it's whatever my thoughts are that day, which is something that I've really enjoyed. I encourage you guys to get out. That was one of the things I've been saying recently, is that get out. And just today it was sunshine in Columbus, and goddamn, we're all depressed. And it's been gray for a week and a half, and sun comes out and I'm out there, and just, even though it's cold, it was just nice to see the sun, to feel it on my face, between the wind killing my face.
It warmed up a little bit later in the day.
It did. But it is kind of going off this thinking before speaking. It is speaking with someone versus talking at.
Yeah.
Which I think is related. And I think it's very, very apparent. And what we were talking about with the technology, that's kind of one of my things that I've seen recently, is especially with the political shit show we've been going through and everything else, if you will. It's a lot of talking at. It's as if, for me, when you talk at someone, you don't want to hear the other side. You don't want to have a conversation. You just want to basically throw up on that person of everything that you know. And sometimes that's fitting. Honestly, it is. I mean, I'll give credit where credit's due. Sometimes it is just, I need to unload this because I realize you're not listening, and it's just not a very good approach. It's usually met with defense.
I think it's
closing down. I think that it's something that sometimes it's better. It's better fitting for you to get your point across and just have a genuine open dialogue with someone, and to learn from each other is teaching and learning experience, as far as having a conversation versus just if like this, like right now, I'm talking to people out there, they have a way to comment on there, but this is me talking to them with them not having an opportunity to respond. If you are in face-to-face or direct communication, whether it be through text or email or whatever it might be, you got to be prepared for the response.
I think it's also, to your point, Steve, it's almost like just taking turns waterboarding each other. You're forcing,
when you're talking at them, right?
Yeah, when all it is just
it's like
talking,
two Twitter feeds going
at
each other.
Just talking at each other. You're simply just waterboarding the other person, because you're not giving them an opportunity to speak, get their point. You don't care what they have to say. Like it's just blind communication at that point.
I think when you're talking at someone, and even if it's for a split second or conversation, it's something that you are making the statement to yourself and to others that you have no desire to have any further input at that point. You have capped it off. Your brain is capped off in this topic, that you already know everything you want to know or can know, in a sense that you are no longer accepting any input at this point, which is, again, it's a very off-putting thing. I'm guilty of it sometimes. I think everyone gets to that point, especially when there's emotion involved. But then also, it's kind of, I will say this, if you do that on a regular, if you find that you're a person that is considered to be talking at people about your viewpoint, and you don't want to hear the other side or hear any side, it's almost like the boy that cried wolf, that when you start asking questions to someone, they're not even going to bother with you anymore, because it's like, oh, you're just going to use whatever I say as more fucking fuel to just say you're wrong and here's why.
I'm just not going to bother and just walk away, and then you don't have that conversation anymore.
Yeah.
You could essentially almost lose that friendship if there is one to begin with.
Absolutely.
Well, I kind of think about some of the conversations that you and I have had, Steve, over the last month and a half.
Yeah.
Like, most of the time you do most of the talking, because there are things that you need to say, that you need to unload on.
Sure. Yeah.
But I also recognize, like last night when we were at the shop, I recognized your need to vent and to just unload.
Yeah.
And, because there was, for quite a bit of the night, you were quiet. You had mentioned that, like you
mentioned that.
Yeah, you were being quiet.
I was quiet. I didn't mention it.
But then after we closed the shop, we stood in the shop for another 15 minutes while you were,
because you questioned
unloading.
why I was quiet, and I said, "Well,
you're
but, wrong. Here's why."
But I just sat there. I just stood there and listened to the event.
And we talked about that on the active listening. That's it's your style, yeah.
And I didn't sit there and I didn't ask a bunch of questions. I didn't sit there and necessarily give my 2 cents about what was going on.
Right.
I was just there for you to say what you needed to say.
Yeah.
If you needed me to say something, I could have said something. But basically, the way you were saying things was like, here's my problem. I said it. Cool. Now I got to figure this out. Thanks for being there and listening.
That's right.
Need no further input on your part.
Yeah. Which, if you have an open dialogue with someone, because that can be, sometimes even open dialogues can be one-sided if that's the scenario as you're describing,
yes,
right?
They can.
I can also, in that situation, I can ask you and say, what do you think? Now, I mean, sometimes, again, in that situation, that's not really what I was addressing initially, but I mean, you gotta, if you ask, what do you think? In any of these types of situations, you better be ready to listen.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people will, and I've been guilty of it, like when you ask, what do you think? And then someone starts talking and you immediately just jump back down their throat. Even if it's not about you, it's just like, I'm venting or whatever, or someone's venting, and then you say, well, what do you think? And you're like, well, I mean, based on what you said, well, here's what I want. Then you just like jump back into it. You're like,
why'd you even ask me what I think if you're just going to chime in?
You're not going to hurt my feelings. But.
I think the polar opposite, even on the other spectrum, is when you have someone that you may be having that conversation with, and they're quiet because you're under the impression that they're soaking everything in, and you ask that question, well, what do you think? And it's crickets. And then you don't really get a response. You're like, so did you hear what I said?
Well, that's another issue altogether.
Right.
That's just not listening or not being engaged in the conversation.
Maybe
Exactly.
they're formulating a thought.
I think, yeah.
It's a long formulation.
Say what you said again.
Can you
Good
repeat
technique.
it?
That's a good technique for anyone. I want to just hear it one more time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can.
You
do that.
said a lot. Can you give me the bullet points?
I think that
Listeners,
the
partners.
speaking with versus talking at, I've seen it more through the technology. I've seen it more with the political stuff. I've seen it more with people on my feeds. That's kind of my comment today, was just one of those things, is that it's just, there are certain people that it's just, you really, they don't want to have a conversation. They don't want, like, if you ask a question, it's like, well, you're not going to change your mind anyways. It's like, well, maybe not altogether, but at the very least, I'm going to want to be able to, I want some input. Like what you're saying, I have a question. So again, it's all about dialogue. We've talked about communication, a lot of that.
I think technology's helped people communicate more often and with more people, because you don't necessarily have to be right there to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But it's also hurt the quality of the conversation.
Yeah,
to some extent.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's increased the quantity of conversation, not necessarily the quality.
Yeah. Let's go to Ray here. We've kind of talked about this. I think Dustin, you said you liked his, is that right? The learning to dance in the rain topic.
Yeah.
Why'd you like that? Not saying it's not good. I'm just asking.
So I think the way that he put it is just is looking at the positive light in every situation, no matter how gloomy it may be.
Yeah.
I think with his analogy, you got to think of it like, they say, April showers bring May flowers. A lot of plants in the world, they need that water to survive, to grow. And if you think about it in an even deeper metaphorical sense, learning to dance in the rain, while yes, it's a rainy day, it's gloomy out, you may have, a lot of things that are going on, a lot of things that are weighing you down. But if you can take a step back and learn to just focus more on that positive light, kind of like the motto of the BS Silver, you focus on the silver lining, then
it's a good saying.
It'll allow you to take those positive steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
It is a great saying.
I'm going to put that shirt on. I'm not.
Wardrobe change.
There's a t-shirt. Oh,
it already was.
Oh, Ray just had one, rising above the BS. Boom. I love it.
yeah.
Michael Scott.
But I think it's a really good topic, especially with everything that we're coming out of in 2020. You know, it was a giant ass rainy year in a sense, you know, a lot of negativity, a lot of depression, a lot of frustrations, a lot of anger. You know, it's all of these things that's weighing down on everybody. And for a lot of others, it's, you know, weighing even more down. You've got, you know, depression and anxiety and stress and all of these things that so many other people who weren't normally battling a lot of these things are now combating it. And it's all new to them and they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to take the next steps. They don't know what to do. They don't want to, you know, maybe go see a therapist or, you know, go some of those routes. Maybe they don't have that board of directors that they can go to. So it's all these things on a rainy day, but how can we learn to take a step out of our comfort zone and just take everything in
and
a positive light?
So that's what I like about this. And then Ray chimed in. I'm not going to read the end of the comment, but he says, rising above is learning to dance in the rain. That's the way he meant it. So that's what I like about some of these topics is like what you got out of it is different than what he maybe intended from it. But I mean, it's all valid in my opinion. Ray's talking about rising above, learning to dance in the rain. It's like when it's raining, huh?
It was
similar. Yeah, very similar.
What he's saying is basically what I got out of it is just learning to rise above.
Yeah, because you know, even when it's raining, you can find beauty
took a long
in it.
way to get there.
It took 3 lefts.
Still end up at the same starting spot.
You too. Learning to dance in the rain. Sometimes it just feels good to be in the rain. So, and that's not the metaphor part of it because, you know, if it's coming down, maybe a storm, not just like a nice, you know, warm 70-degree kind of drizzle. And it's hot, you know, you just kind of want to cool off. But if it's actually rain coming down on you and it's a storm and everything else, like learning to dance in it, you know, jump in the puddles and things like that, like a kid, sometimes it's just finding the joy and realizing that, you know, storm's going to pass.
Yeah.
You know, the rain's going to pass. You're going to, you know, get through the lower moments. You're going to struggle a little bit. You're going to get wet. You know, you don't have your umbrella with you. So it kind of, you know, knocks you down type thing or whatever. And you get your shoes wet. That sucks. No one likes wet socks. Right. So there's a lot of negatives there potentially with this metaphor, but you definitely can kind of get back when things start drying out, sun comes back out. If you can get through that rainstorm, then you're going to easily get through when things are going well.
Absolutely.
Nate, anything on that?
Well, I mean, I was thinking of that analogy, you know, like in terms of careers, relationships, like, you know, going through a job loss, going through a breakup, like that's kind of
it's more of a hurricane. It's not really rain.
Typhoon.
But like what comes out of it on the back end or what comes next might be better. And that rainstorm. Thank you, Daniel. Like Daniel last week, Daniel was in the garage as well. And, you know, he talked about some of the stuff he's gone through after the podcast. And like sometimes going through those storms will teach you lessons that you can then apply later on. And so that way the next time something comes up, like it's like things are better on the other side of that storm because of what you learned after going through whatever that terrible experience was. You learned some valuable lessons. Maybe it made you a better person.
Sure.
You know, like for example, Steve, with what you've gone through, you found the old man walks.
Sure.
And that's been a bright shining light, not just on you, but to other people as well.
Yeah.
And you know, perhaps if you hadn't gone through what you'd gone through, maybe that wouldn't have happened. You still wouldn't want to go through what you did.
It's like I could find walking without going through what I've gone through the last several months. I choose that if I want to.
Yes.
If I could choose the last 90 days.
But something pushed you to it.
Yeah.
You didn't want it. You still don't want it.
That's where focus came from as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, all right. So when things are going well, that's when the sunshine's coming down and you start, you know, doing that shit when things are going well. How about that? Everyone else. Don't fucking wait for the rain to come. Like when it's sunny out, don't just lay down and get a suntan for Christ's sake.
Go for a walk.
Go for a fucking walk.
There you go.
All right. I don't know. Looking at some of these from Jake, I saw he did tune in at one point. But doing what is right, even though it's not what you want to do. These are, man,
moral standards.
You know, when Jake was a part of this podcast, I feel like some of these, like this, when we'd sit there and try to come up with topics, like he's been working on these 5. I feel like, and I love you, Jake. I'm not saying like you did have some good ideas. I'm not saying that. This is joking, but it's like I feel like he's been working on these 5 in a notebook for like the last 3 years. I'm just kidding. So yeah, doing what is right.
Notebook in the mail.
The next one is letting friends go. I haven't really heard from him in a while, so maybe that'd be part of it. Doing what is right, even though it's not what you want to do. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you have thoughts on that?
I think it goes kind of hand in hand with what your moral code is. You know, it may not be exactly what you want to do, but you know it's the right thing that needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
Well, just because it doesn't necessarily mean what you want to do is wrong.
Right.
Like, because that's what they use to define like integrity.
It could just be the more difficult path.
Is doing the right thing when no one's watching.
Right.
You know, that's kind of an example they give when they talk about integrity. It's like, you know, it's doing what you want to do and doing what's right. It's not always the same thing. It's not always different things either.
I agree with you. I think it's doing what is right no matter what. I think to Jake's point, it may not be exactly what you want to do, but it's probably the longer or harder path, but you know that's the right one you need to do.
There you go.
It may take you longer to go that route. It may be extra steps. You may stumble along the way, but at the end of the road, you know there's a light. You know that's what you're trying to chase. You know that's what's going to be right for you.
Sure. And sometimes you gotta pick, you know. So at some point, what's right versus what you want to do, it's when you make the decision. And I think what I will encourage anyone out there to do, myself included, I talk to myself on this podcast a lot. You gotta make sure you have all the bases covered. You have to have all the points that you want to consider addressed. Because if you're making, that's that whole thing, you're almost going back to the thinking before speaking. If you make a knee-jerk reaction because you think that's the right thing to do, even though it's not what I want to do, sometimes I feel like you can actually run it again. You can actually talk to the person. I think a lot of times, ultimately, if you have better communication, sometimes you may not get to that point. And sometimes you'll find that what you need to do or what's right is what you want to do. But if you're closed off, because, you know, when I went through, I remember like when finally I started marriage counseling years and years ago with my ex-wife, I didn't communicate my side of things well enough that by the time we started marriage counseling, I had to dig myself out of a hole that I didn't necessarily need to get in. So I think that sometimes if you communicate on certain issues, you may not find yourself having that moral dilemma as much. And this is just kind of from a different angle that, again, we talked about the active listening a couple weeks back or a few weeks back. Mm-hmm. That type of practice in your everyday life, and I mentioned that, is that if you're constantly observing, that's part of the active listening. So that's just with relationships and such like that. With jobs and stuff like that, you know you got to do something, but you don't really want to do it because it's leaving your comfort zone or whatever it might be. If you have a toxic person in your life and you've exhausted your options, you know, that was one of the other ones that Jake put on there is letting friends go. Sometimes it's you can be a friend with someone, but if they are a toxic relationship, you let them go or take a step back and then see where they're at, you know, and kind of gauge it. Other people will operate differently. I mean, I know some people that are listening that have been on the podcast that I go to for somewhat my board of directors. And sometimes they have an ability to just, when they know things need to be cut off, even though they don't want to, they cut it off.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, struggle with that all the time.
I'm with you.
But I'm learning. It's all about learning. It's about getting to that point where you can find your comfort zone to a point, right, where you can do what you think is right, but also, even if it's against your better judgment or what you think you want to do, try to find some sort of way to bring those two paths closer together so you're a little more comfortable with it. You don't always have to go hard right or hard left, in my opinion.
I agree.
Silence. Ian's out there. Here's one from him. This is a big one. This is a big one.
Big one?
Take a sip of your whiskeys there, boys, before I read this. And ladies out there. How about don't or stop living in fear? Because you know if you're not living a life, you're just waiting to die. And that's why I said take a drink.
God damn, Ian. I didn't see that one on.
Pulled out the fucking shovel.
I didn't see that one on the feed. Jeez.
So I listened to some stuff on SoundCloud, and if anyone's interested, it's like a motivational speech and you know, combination of things. There's a bunch of them out there that typically are about an hour long that I listen to, and it's a combination of like Eric Thomas, and then there's like Arnold Schwarzenegger's on them. There's gosh, who else is on there? Some like Will Smith quotes, a bunch of other like, and then they have music involved as well. But they have these inspirational messages as well as music, and I work out to them. I love it, especially when I am feeling down and all that stuff. But there's one quote that this reminds me of it, and it's like, someone should tell you from the moment that you're born that someday you're going to die, because you can then live your life from the very beginning that it is a finite thing. And if you don't stay active, you don't stay, and this is not the whole, like that was the beginning part, but the way I take it is that if you have that mentality, you can look at it from a morbid standpoint, which is the way this comes across when Ian says that, right? You know, it's like you're just waiting to die. But if you're living your life, that if someone tells you that someday you're going to die, you keep that in your mind, you don't waste a day. You don't have that moment where you're just like, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything today. You know, I'm just, you know, Sunday, I'll just going to stay home, watch TV all day. And there's nothing wrong if you guys want to do that, but it's one of those things that it's like, okay, that's the one day. What if you die tonight? That's the way you want to live your last day? I mean, it's just like there's this mentality there that you know, if you're just, as he said, living in fear, that's another reason. You just don't do anything. You don't, that thing we just talked about as far as doing something that you know is right versus what you want to do. Sometimes you have to do that so that you can then really live with that purpose. Come on, man.
Come on, Shannon, you know
rodeo.
better. Shannon's going to get on the mic.
From what he's saying, it sounds like it's the old deathbed regrets. When you're on your deathbed, and you think back on your life, and you're like, "Shit, I should have done this. I should have talked to this person. I should have took this chance."
That's
But
kind of the
regretting
comment
whole
that
thing.
he actually just posted on the live feed about sitting on the front porch thinking about all the things you could have done or should have done instead of, you know.
Let me comment on that part. It's that's part of it. But when you're in the present, have you had those days where you're like, you know what, I should reach out to my mom today, and you don't? You know what, I should go work out. Shannon's coming back up, Mike. I should go work out. I should, you know, it's like those moments, right? You're in the McDonald's drive-thru, and you're like, I don't need the extra large fries, but I don't know if they make. Do they still do that? Like Supersize Me? They don't do that after the documentary.
I think a lot of them. I think they got rid of the supersize.
Regardless, do I need the second Big Mac? I really don't need that. And then, like, you know, 10 years later, you're sitting, you know, on your front porch, and you're like, yeah, I wouldn't have diabetes and you know, this heart condition if I would have just said to myself and listened to myself in the present. I only need one Big Mac today. I don't need 2 or 3. Or that Shamrock Shake, even though it's delicious around St. Patrick's Day.
Now you're talking crazy.
Not a fan.
I mean, yeah, we'll get those. Yeah, it's cool, man.
No, just what you were saying about like thinking about somebody should reach out to. I've had one of my buddies on my mind here lately, and I've been like every other day he comes across my mind. I'm like, man, I should have reached out to him, see how he's doing, but I haven't done it.
So what are you gonna do tomorrow?
I'm gonna call him.
There you go.
All right.
Don't forget, set an alarm.
Anyone listening is probably gonna hit him up on that. Did you call that dude or that guy, that girl? Did you do it?
About 30 messages.
That's called
first thing in the morning.
accountability.
Accountability.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's called community.
Community accountability. Yeah.
I love it.
6 1/2 dozen.
But I mean, I'll say, I mean, that's the big part of it. I do encourage you guys, and if you guys are interested, I will absolutely send you those links if you guys want. It's just cool to work out to. It's cool, like if you guys are having that down moment or you're getting ready in the morning, you want to hear some of that stuff. I know some people find those motivational speakers cheesy or whatever, but if it hits you in the right moment, it's going to hit you, in my opinion.
I'm with you, Steve, not to like kind of keep it going, but I've done a lot of kind of I don't call it self-searching, since the new year, but of trying to rebuild myself.
Yeah, you were listening to a podcast that I talked about.
Yeah, so like I started listening to Ed Milet a long while ago, and I just kind of stopped. And now I've got a 40-minute drive each way to work, and so now it's on constantly. And even if I don't finish it, when I get back in my car to leave, it picks up right where it left off.
Yeah,
and it's just
the Bourbon and BS podcast will also do that.
It will.
Go ahead.
But
shameless plug.
I've also been looking at bettering myself also in the professional sense, and I've been in the same job for quite a while now, but I can't help but day in day out just think of the times that I miss or don't get to have with my fiance and our little one, and she's got dance 4 nights a week. So, when I come home from work, even if I work early, I don't get to see them till they get to come home. So, it just really makes that part a lot difficult. And then, I always work weekends working in retail. So the free time that they have, I don't get to have with them. And, it's just all those little things. And I don't want to miss those moments with her or those memories with them, and her growing up, because, I unfortunately had that growing up because my dad worked 2 full-time jobs. It was a hard time growing up because I remember, my mom told me a story when I was playing t-ball where I went up to her and asked why my dad never came to any of my games. And she said, well, your dad's working, he's doing that to kind of help provide for us, she could just tell, I had that kind of sadness in my tone in my face just because I wanted him to be there too. But he was working 40 hours a week as a county engineer, and then he would come home and load up the trailers, and we had a full-time lawn care business where he had 80 to 95 accounts that he would do on top of that.
Sure.
So I didn't get to see him a whole lot growing up, and so that made that difficult. And I just, at the same time, I don't want to do that to her, but it's also a counterbalance because I have a career, I have a job. So I have to stay focused on that, but I'm building myself up professionally and helping myself grow. I've actually just ordered a couple books to read through, kind of help, last week's episode with Mike kind of helped push me to do that even more.
Good.
And one of those is to study and get my PHR certification.
Which is, for people that don't know.
Yeah, professional human resources. And there's different levels for that, but the standard one is your PHR, and there's different variations of it as well. But I want to try to push myself to do that because in today's market, certifications like that are almost like trades, and you're losing
for
that.
Sure.
It's more tools in the tool belt.
Exactly. And I use that metaphor a lot at work. I can't expect someone to do the job if I don't give them the tools to do it. So it's the same. I can't expect myself to do a job if I don't give myself the tools to do it.
Right.
So I think in regards to Ian's question for the table, I'm trying to better myself every day by listening to, the Ed Milets, the Andy Frisellas, a lot of those other podcasts that help get other people, other professionals who've been through other scenarios and experiences, and learning from them and learning from everyone in the community here and everyone that we have here on the show, even every week, just to help build myself. And, I challenge everyone else out there to do the same too.
So surround yourself with good knowledge. And again, I think that goes back to some of the other things that we have talked about is like that whole, again, if you cap your input, that's all, like what is all you know at that point. You're not going to get any better or worse. You're not going to validate anything that you think any further, because again, things around you are going to be changing constantly. The scenario, the platform of everything around you is going to continue to evolve. And if you stop at a certain point, so if you think that everything at 20 whatever years old is all you know, and you stop, and I've been that person before, and sometimes it takes that moment that you were talking about, where it comes, like Nate was talking about with, like, where I came up with the focus thing. And then recently the old man walks. It's like, when you have something come to you that alters, it basically takes out the foundation of what you think you know, that's when you start listening. I think that's I encourage everyone out there to not turn that off at any point. Don't get comfortable with what you know and constantly listen a little bit more. Read a book. That's what I was going to do. I haven't done it since Mike's been on last week. It's been busy. But, he was talking about reading books, and you're now listening to podcasts. I listen to some podcasts, and sometimes even then I'll fade out of there, So
if you stop learning, you stop growing.
Yeah, you stop growing.
Absolutely.
Dustin, one of the things I want to say to you and anyone out there, a couple of days ago, I was talking about how even on my walks, I had the pleasure of having some people, friends that have joined me on said walks. And then when I went back to it a few days later, where it's just me, and even like some of the walks, I'd call my mom and talk to her for, 10, 15 minutes, in the morning or whatever. But it was like I wasn't just by myself. I was having interaction. But then when it came back just to me, that's when it was the other side of the balance, where it was just time reflecting on all the people. Yeah, like Nate's pointed at, they can't hear you point at your head.
I didn't want to interrupt.
No, I like that. But yeah,
you're taking the time for you and your mental health.
Yes.
Instead of spending your entire 2.5, 3 mile walk or whatever it is, like constantly talking to someone else, you're also taking time to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. And there was the one time where, I take pictures every day just to share on social media. And that's for me, and also has turned out to be beneficial to other people from what I've understood. But there's a moment where there were times where I would just turn off the music that I'm listening to and put the phone in my pocket. And then I'd walk a half mile to a mile and just walk and look around and
take in what's around you.
Shit, that's when the brain starts really working and it scares the shit out of me. Victoria says introspection. Yeah. Sometimes I don't want to get in my own rabbit hole.
That was my question: is like, can you legitimately sit there in silence with yourself? A lot of people can't.
It's
incredibly
difficult.
Going and something distracted them.
It's incredibly difficult for me.
Yeah, can you sit there and actually soak in your thoughts?
I used to write poetry to help me do that.
I'll say this, more recently, and for those that being in the house by myself now, the quiet. This is something that I think a lot of times, Daniel, you've been dealing with this as well. I know a lot of people have dealt with this in the past. I've dealt with it in the past. I'm dealing with it again. It's something that I'm used to being around people in work. So this last year was a lot different for that. You know what I mean? That's what we have. Like for a lot of people, it was the technology, the Zooms, all the crap we were doing, that then people got tired of that, right? Because it's not the real thing. In my day-to-day, it's been very different. It's something that I think that was my point, I think, to Dustin. Not encouraging, just to like be like, end everything and just be by myself. That's not what I mean. But if you practice that, Shannon, you practice the time alone, you will be less and less afraid of being alone with your own thoughts. You'll harness some sort of tool and practice that if you have the opportunity to have people around you most of the time, and then you also take time for yourself, smoke a cigar, go out to the patio, go out to the garage, take a walk. It's silly. I'm 40 years old and I'm taking walks now. That's what, like, that was the joke, is that why are you calling an old man walk? You're not that old, blah, 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 blah. It's because I told my buddy Sonny, who was here last week and he couldn't make it this week. When I said to him, I was like, I'm really enjoying my morning walks. He's like, God damn, you sound old. You sound like an old man, is what he said. And he's older than I am. He's 50. But it was like, that is actually the thing, is that, I wish I would have come across this earlier, when things were,
good,
banging. Not the things are good now. I'm just saying, like, things were banging on all cylinders. It's like, things are going well, and I found an opportunity to better myself, find a new hobby, and not just stay status quo. And that's my thing to Dustin and anyone else out there. And I'm not going to single in on Dustin, but it's like, if you are finding yourself where you're just surrounded by people and it's just like the noise, or good things are turning into noise, take a moment. And it doesn't have to be like what I'm doing right now, because I don't think I'll be able to keep it up necessarily the rest of my life, is doing, an hour walk a day, because life will get in the way. You know, if I, you know, have significant others, job changes, kids, whatever it might be, your time alone gets constricted. But having those practices, you realize the importance of it. And I think that you can actually use it as a tool. People talk about meditation. Meditation doesn't have to be where you're like in this uncomfortable. I don't think I'm flexible enough to do what, you know, I'm thinking of, where you like cross the legs.
Cross
on top of
legs.
like, yeah, but like on top of the knees and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, yeah, I got my hip already hurts thinking about it. But I mean,
knees
it's
hurt
something that you
thinking
can
about
do something for like for me for a long time. It was going to the gym. That was my focus and everything else. You know what I mean? That was like half hour to 60 minutes of being headphones in and just being by myself, even though there's people around, not interacting with people. So I encourage everyone to find that that thing that Shannon's talking about, where it's
Find
like,
your
can you be
woosah.
alone? Because being alone, if you're not used to it, is a very scary place.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that in prisons, one of the most worst punishments is solitude?
Solitary
Solitary
confinement.
confinement.
Yeah.
Because you go fucking nuts. Because we are social people. We're social beings.
It's one of the reasons, you know, my mom had commented, it's one of the reasons why she got a dog. You know,
I think that's great.
I mean, at one point last year, you know, she lost her husband of 20 years, and she did not like, you know, being in the house by herself.
Right.
You know, that was a struggle for her, and she needed something there to interact with. So she figured it was easier to get a dog than another man.
She's probably not wrong there. She's probably not wrong. What else you guys got? I don't know. I mean, keep pulling this stuff up.
Well, you had the master list here.
The master list is running thin here, and so I mean, where are we at here?
Maybe
We
our
got some-
studio audience has any questions.
Yeah, I mean,
too.
we're doing okay on time. If anyone else has anything, yeah, I'm looking at some
Any of the
these
live
comments
viewers
here.
have questions for the table, or
Well, Ian had asked one more on a lighter topic. If
Go ahead.
anyone, albums to smoke cigars to.
So what do you-
albums, or
just music? What types of music?
He said specifically albums,
Jeez.
which
So I have
go ahead, Dustin. I can think of a few, but go ahead.
I have a smoking and drinking playlist, if you will, kind of
Okay.
like that relaxation. But I bounce between two of them. One is either Frank Sinatra,
Classic, yeah.
or the other one has a variety of, you know, Whiskey Myers, Zach Brown Band, Dan and Shay. Just a lot of like country songs. Tyler Childers is in there. Chris Stapleton, Luke Combs. You know, there's a lot of country songs, but there's more that kind of mellow relaxation type music more than anything, if you will.
Yeah.
Just kind of because for me, especially, you know, like when I live by myself, you know, I'd sit out my balcony, I'd put it on, and it'd just have a drink and light up a cigar and just take everything in. And just the music kind of turned into an ambiance more than anything.
Great point. Sorry, the comment just came across. Victoria said, mistake, should have chosen the man. Must be a hell of a dog.
He's a young pupper.
Yeah.
He just destroys.
For me,
everything.
music, I'm very mood dependent, and it's something that I have now gotten out of. But even when things are good, sometimes I like sad and depressing music, so because it's emotional, right? It's not always that, but yeah, half a bottle in, man. If things can be fucking sunshine and rainbows, and all of a sudden I'm just like, my life is EDM, like the like Jersey Shore.
Shannon's like, no.
He said no.
I
More of that house
I'm-
lounge kind of kick back and shit.
Elevator music.
Blues and classic rock from the
I like
audience.
it.
I'm
I
a
like it.
like for relaxing for me, especially like sitting on a porch, smoking a cigar, having a drink, like just about any Pink Floyd album except The Wall. Like I love The Wall. I love that album. But if I'm sitting there relaxing and stuff, like I'd rather go to like Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals,
Have a cigar.
Division Bell, like some of those albums. Alan Parsons Project, Turn of a Friendly Card. That's an album that I'll go to. I have that on vinyl as well.
Can't go wrong with Bob Marley.
I'm not
Marley.
a big Bob Marley fan. He makes great music. That's just not. That's not necessarily my go-to. One of the things that's not necessarily in my genre. And then Harry Nielsen Schmilson, that album. That's the one that has Lime in the Coconut.
Oh yeah.
That album. Yeah, everyone knows that song thanks to Coca-Cola and their Diet Coke with lime
Sorry for
commercials.
making him money.
Yeah.
I like when it comes to like Bob Marley type music, the reggae or like the feel good stuff. Well, yeah, there's other. I'll throw it out there when I'm in that mood, which I'm trying to get back into. I've been listening to it more, even though it's wintertime. Is Mishka, and then also Xavier Rudd and John Butler Trio are three that I really enjoy. We'll put some on here before if you guys hang out for a little bit afterwards. But those are gonna. They're so Xavier Rudd and John Butler Trio here are both Australian, and Xavier Rudd, if you listen to him, like he's actually very talented musician. One of the things that I love about him is that he's got some. I missed him live years ago, and he was in Cleveland. I was like, I'll go. Next time he's in town. He's if he's in town, he's not coming to Ohio typically. So. But he's very talented. He's got great music, in my opinion. But he has the ability to play didgeridoo very, very well, and so he can actually do like a 6 to 10 minute didgeridoo jam, which sounds corny.
That's the video you showed me the other day. Yeah.
Like, I mean, he can, and I tell you what, like you talk about the EDM, he can create this like tone and beat where it's like kind of that vibe and stuff like that.
Because he's playing the didgeridoo while playing the drums.
While playing drums and, different drums and the beat. Yeah, it's like he's like in this like basically this surrounding himself with everything around him, all these different things. And, it's pretty cool. So
jam sesh with the ditch.
Definitely check them out. Xavier Rudd, John Butler Trio. He's been with different groups. Ben Harper, I like a lot, when he does different bands that he plays with. I've seen him live. John Butler Trio I've seen live. Mishka, the cool story about Mishka for those that are 40-year-old white males, he was actually discovered by Matthew McConaughey. So Matthew McConaughey was down in the Bahamas or whatever, and Mishka was this local artist or whatever, and he got this CD passed to him, and then he was in, I think, like, so anyways, he was back in Texas. He like couldn't find this guy or whatever, this Mishka guy, and found him. Like, he was playing on like the head, whatever, like the marquee of some local place in somewhere in Texas. I guess they made his way up there. Story I remember. And so he was like, oh, that's the guy. And the story I know is that he called his agent. And he's like, so like, how do I like start like a record label? Because I want to represent this guy. So he approached this Mishka guy, and he's like, "Hey, I'd like to sign you to my label I just started." And it was the J.K. Livin', which is Just Keep Living from the Dazed and Confused line. So then he made this really terrible movie that I really like to watch when I want to think warm weather, called Surfer Dude. It's terrible. It's Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson.
Oh, how can you go wrong with those two?
You can
Apparently
that movie. You can go wrong.
Apparently that movie.
It's not a real deep
really
movie, but
wrong.
it does put you in a good mood. And it turns out there's Xavier Rudd and Mishka music in there. So you want to get high if you're into that type of thing.
I'll tell you what. One person I saw live, who I'm honestly first and only time I'll ever see him live, and that I actually fully listened to all of his music was Elton John. And I think he would be
deal.
kind of a big deal, yeah. But I think I know being at the concert, I just thought to myself, he would be also a great one to just kind of put on and throw back and chill, but also one that you could jam out every now and then. Another album that I really loved was criticize all you want, but Justin Timberlake's 2020 album, the 2020 Experience. He had two parts.
JT action there, man.
Yeah, I mean that thing was. It was good. Was
that your jam? Would you say that was your jam?
I would say that was my jam when it first came out. Yeah,
nice.
I still love a lot of the songs that's on that album.
No, he's super. Yeah, he's talented. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely the most successful out of that group.
So I'll throw this to the panel and to the audience. So take cigars and whiskey out of the equation here. What do you do to blow off steam or de-stress, like a hobby, a go-to? So for me, as you guys know, I love to go camping, get lost in the woods, disappear. That's my quiet time. That's how I reconnect. I get my mind right. You know, that's what I do. What are those things besides what we do here with the cigars and the bourbon and whiskey?
Steve, you want to go first?
Yeah. Fitness. Music. Listening to. I can't play shit. Sex if it's available. So I'm in a healthy relationship. All right, calm down.
Thank
I'm
God
not that kind of guy. I'm just saying if I'm
Thank
in a
God that comment.
if I'm
wasn't
in a
on the
healthy
mic.
relationship, you know, at the time it's, you know, and movies. Which the thing about movies now is that I find it's so, you know, when you're young, right, and you have your parents and all that stuff, and they listen to the same music. Like, you know, I grew up on, like, you know, the 60s and stuff like that, like the oldies. And as a kid, you're just like, why are you listening to this? It's like, that goes back to that whole thing where it's like when you cap off your tank and you're just like, no more. That's why older people don't really get the younger music, is because they already filled their tank with the music that they like. I'm the same thing with movies. Like, I just keep going back to the shows that I watched in like the 2000s. Like, I started like redoing like this Rescue Me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, then I tell Nate about it and he comes in like 3 days later. He's like, I watched all 7 seasons. I was like, there wasn't that much time in the day. I don't understand. I'm on episode 5 of season 1.
It was 3 weeks.
But it's like, it's one of those things, like with movies, like I do enjoy some new ones and stuff like that. But I'm working on the fact that I'm of a certain age where I just like to go back to the same shit that I know I enjoy. But that's what I would say. What about you guys?
Nate, you want to go? You want me to go?
Sure. Since you keep deferring.
I'll go if you don't want to. It's
No,
fine.
I'll go.
Either way.
One of mine is movies. I have certain genres that I tend to gravitate more towards. And, you know, sometimes I'll just pick a movie in that genre that I haven't seen before, haven't heard anything about it. Sometimes I'm lucky and I find a movie that I actually really enjoy. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, was that a waste of an hour and a half? But it wasn't, you know, because I'll sit there and pick apart, you know, bad directing, editing, bad dialogue. I mean, I'll just sit there and rip a movie apart if it's worth ripping apart. But then
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah. But then another one of those that I do is you know, certain video games, because like with certain video games, like right now for the last couple weeks, I've been playing Assassin's Creed.
Nope.
There's not a whole lot of thinking that goes on with playing that game. You're just going around completing missions, assassinating people. And
I'm not a video gamer, but it's probably why it's successful. There's not a whole lot of thinking going on there.
Well, I mean, that's like that and God of War and Uncharted. Those are like my 3 favorite franchises in terms of video games. And sometimes it's because I really like the storyline that's with them. Like, yeah. I do not like Call of Duty games. I don't like them.
Why? I can tell you why I don't like them. I played it once.
So most people that tend to play like games like Call of Duty or something, they're playing it because of the online experience and multiplayer and stuff like that. And, you know, they get to play with. And I used to be that way when I was in college with Halo. We would have Halo tournaments on college.
GoldenEye right here.
There you go. There's a good one.
Cheers.
You know, and that, you know, so you have those games where, you know, you're playing with people online and stuff. But nowadays, when I look at a video game, I look at a video game for the story.
Yeah, it's like a movie, right? So,
I don't care about the online and multiplayer aspect. I want to play the game because I think it's a good game and it's worth playing. And, you know, sometimes if it's a game that, you know, it might be a game I'll come back to. You know, so like there's one game like Assassin's Creed Origins that I've been going through. I've been playing that game. It actually keeps track of your playtime. And so far, I'm not even halfway through the game, and I've been playing that game for 60 hours.
You like Metal Gear?
I never played Metal Gear because I didn't have the updated Xboxes. Like I had the first Xbox when it came out. Never had any of the Xboxes since. Because there are certain games that are only on particular platforms. Mm-hmm. And Halo was really the only game I liked out of the Xbox.
We have nerded out.
And then, but then PlayStation had Uncharted and God of War. And
It'll
so
get
that's
worse.
why I ended up going with the
You're gonna make it worse?
PlayStation line
I might.
instead of Xbox, was because of those two franchises. And then once Half-Life 2 became
All right,
available
all
on
right,
PlayStation
all right.
instead
All
of
right,
Xbox,
no, calling it. No
Okay.
more, no specifics on games.
I'm done.
Jesus. This is going to be a half hour. I'd be like, but then, hang on. No, sorry, I'm not going to
They've got a new release
make
coming.
No,
My mom still loves Tetris.
I think,
She
yeah,
can
Tetris,
kick ass in Tetris.
that's a classic. So this is, as you get older, right? So I had an Xbox and I played Vice City. That was the last game. And then I just was like, I'm done with it. Because that was, of course, 80s theme, right? So I played in college and I went to college in 98 to 2002. But I tried to stay with it. My brother's 2 years older and they've got everything, but now he's got kids. And then now that it justifies the nerdum. But yeah, Bourbon and BS becomes Geek Squad, Ryan Jones. Here's how you know, I remember that the moment I became, in a sense, my mom and my aunt, we had, I don't know what, I think it was Super Nintendo. We brought it over to my grandmother's house and it was Mario Kart.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting in front of this 27-inch console TV. We plugged it in at my grandmother's house in Chicago. And my aunt and my mom were going to try it. And this is well before what we have the technology today. And they've got the controllers and we're playing Mario Kart, right? And I remember watching them and they were literally doing this.
Oh, yeah.
My mom did the same
Turning the
thing.
controller like a steering wheel, right? And this is before accelerometers, right? So it didn't do shit. I knew I got to that point 2 times. Once, to my benefit, I was playing with a old roommate of mine who was younger than me. And he was like, I got a PlayStation, whatever, 418 or whatever it was. And he's like, I got the new NHL. I was like, cool. He's like, what controls do you want? I was like, I don't know. Go to the settings because I think that probably still works. We're scrolling through it. And I was like, wait, what's that NHL Classic? And I don't know how many buttons are on a PlayStation controller, but you got the 4
There's a lot.
circles and
We got
all that stuff.
R1, R2, L1,
sure.
L2.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Mhm.
So it got down to the point where it said NHL 95 or NHL Classic. And I'm like, all right, so direction, pass and shoot. I'm like, bingo. Now you're speaking my language. Because I learned everything I know. I learned about icing from NHL 94 and 95 on Super Nintendo.
Heck yeah.
So, and I'm looking forward to hockey season this year, by the way, because I kind of understand it from 1995. But what was great is that I beat him 1-0, and he was that classic thing, where he's just like, well, yeah, of course you're gonna win because you only have 2 buttons, and I'm like, yeah, you were deking me or whatever you were calling it, and I won that one. Then we played Call of Duty, and I was like, where the fuck did that come from? We're on this co-op mission or whatever, and I'm like, I remember GoldenEye. It's you go down a path, and then that's the capability of that game is that you only go a certain way.
Yeah.
And there's one trick one that you have to remember the next time because it happens every time. Call of Duty, I'm we're in this open fucking there's rubble around you and all that stuff. And it's you get killed and it's where'd that come from? From behind. I'm like, well, that's not fair. I'm like, well, it's more realistic that way. I was like, well, I don't care. Yeah, Tecmo Bowl, exactly.
So I'll say this just to throw a little nostalgia in there. So when I was growing up, this was after my parents had split. One of the fondest memories I have growing up is on Wednesday nights. My dad would pick me up after he got off work, and we would go to Taco Bell, and then we would go back to my mom's house after eating Taco Bell. And my dad and I would play a game called Jackal on the original Nintendo.
I was thinking Atari.
And that was just our thing. We just loved playing Jackal after eating Taco Bell. And so several years ago, as a Christmas present, my wife actually bought me an original Nintendo.
Nice.
There you go.
And
Nest.
the Jackal console or cartridge.
Nice. Did you have to blow it out before you put it in because it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
We
that
are
way
dating
then,
ourselves.
Yeah.
so that way then, my dad could come over and we could have that nostalgia moment. So I was like, yeah, Dad, sometime when you come over, bring some Taco Bell over. And he's like, why? I'm like, you'll find out why when you get here. We'll eat Taco Bell and then we'll sit in the basement and play Jackal. And of course, neither one of us remembers anything about the game after that many years. But there was just a memory and experience tied to that because that's what my dad and I did, and that's how the two of us bonded during those times, when we would see each other. Because, the way the custody is like every other weekend I was with my dad, and then on Wednesday nights. So that was the only time I really saw my dad.
That's good
And
memories right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you tied
And so
in.
to be able to relive that, as nerdy as it may be.
Do you eat Taco Bell before playing?
Yeah, we would eat Taco Bell and then.
No, do you do that now when you play it? Do you eat Taco Bell before?
No.
I feel like you should.
I feel like you should.
Just
Get a
saying.
soft pack or whatever they call that. I don't know.
Party pack. Nacho
So
Belgrande.
taking away from your parents' basement.
No, my basement. It was my parents' living room. My mom's living room. My basement.
No, my game was Contra, but
There you go.
that's why I wanted a Nintendo. Yeah, exactly. That was just that was amazing. Spread gun, lights out.
There you go.
So here's a quick one. Let's get back on a little bit more of a bigger picture here. I posted this 2 days ago. You've heard the saying, "Fake it until you make it." Before, change the mentality, or if you guys, and I want to know what your comment is on this, is because a lot of people actually liked this and appreciate it. Change the mentality to push yourself until you believe in yourself going forward. Believe in yourself like others believe in you, and push yourself.
It's deep.
It's not deep. I think the
No.
fake it until you make it is one of those things that we try to do sometimes, especially in a job or you put your first impression when you're like going on the first date. I'm not saying you're faking it, but you're faking a little bit. Like you're
Putting on
Right,
a good
yeah.
face.
yeah, exactly.
The first impression.
Putting on your makeup,
put it on there.
doing your hair.
But I think the mentality of pushing yourself until you believe in
Shoot.
yourself sometimes is something that is more internal, and it's something that's in the same vein. But sometimes you don't know all the skills. You can't just fake it. Like you go into a new job, you know what I mean? Like when Nate, I know you went into the cigar industry, and then you get into the sales of what you're doing now and the support of what you're doing now, and Dustin as well, and your career and everything. I think that push yourself until you believe in yourself is a mentality that people don't really preach. They don't encourage you to do that.
No, I think to your point, Steve, is when you go into a new job, there has to be that level of I don't want to say naiveness to it, but there has to be that self-understanding that obviously you're going into something you may not know a lot about, or if it is something you do know a lot about, there still has to be a level of humbleness.
Yeah.
But you, rather than faking it till you make it, you have to have a level of self-confidence that you can not necessarily BS your way in the beginning, but show that at least some things, but you still need to continue to push yourself to continue to grow, because while you're in something new, there's always going to be something new to learn. I mean, I've been doing the same job for 14, 15 years, but I'm always learning something. And, I may have a wealth of knowledge, and I've had story leaders tell me that, I'm one of the smartest ASLs they've worked with. I take it with a grain of salt, and I don't believe them, because there's hundreds of other ASLs out there. But I also
assistant store leader.
Yeah, assistant store leader. But I take it with a ton of gratitude. But that amount of knowledge that I have it because I want to pass that on to the people that work for me. I want to be able to equip them with the amount of knowledge that they have. So I'm constantly pushing myself to grow and to learn and be that subject matter expert, so I can pass that information on to the people who work for me.
Yeah.
So they can become those subject matter experts and pass that on to the associates that work for them.
Well, I think that the difference in mentality, and that's what fake it until you make it has limitations, because
Right.
you're not actually like, you're fake it till you make it. You can get so far, then you hit your ceiling, and then that's the person that a lot of times sometimes it's the fact that you have gone beyond because you fake it till you make it, and then all of a sudden you get that promotion, and you're like, oh fuck, I'm underwater here. I'm in quicksand. I hit my ceiling, and I'm beyond my ceiling. Now I'm gonna get fired. So what was it all worth? The last 5 years of my time that I made good money, and all of a sudden you no longer can succeed because you didn't actually learn anything. You've just been being an actor. Or do you push yourself until you believe in yourself by showing up on time, you know, or early or whatever, like all the age old stuff. I'm not saying like show up like an hour earlier, but show up on time, work, write shit down, go through the learning steps. Because if you push yourself until you believe in yourself, now all of a sudden you don't have to fake it anymore. That's the mentality shift is what that post was about. It's like, you know, I check in at the gym doing that. That was a gym check-in of all things. You know what I mean? That was one of those things. And listening to some of those inspirational things the motivational things, is the simple fact that, you know, you can go to the gym. That's a very easy example. You can go in there, you wear the right clothes, you know what I mean? You buy all the Under Armour shit, you know, you go to I love the Rock, but it's like you go there, you overpay for the Rock's, you know, Under Armour wardrobe, all that stuff. And then you go in there and you're doing stuff the wrong form. You're not, you know, you're looking around, you're trying to keep yourself, but you know, you got all the flashy stuff on that you look like you know what you're doing. And then you have someone like myself where I'm not proud of it, but I wear basically the same workout pants all the time for the last fucking 6 years. You know what I mean? I don't know how they're still intact. I can't find them anymore. Nike pants, you know what I mean? I can't find them anymore. I don't know how they're still intact. I wash them all the time. You know what I mean? It's like, they're great job, Nike. You should put them back out. But I'm saying, like, it's like one of those things. It's like, I don't really dress to impress at the gym. I don't try to, like, you know, show off or anything. I'm not like looking at the weight on I'm not trying to lift heavier, but it's like you do it where you push yourself until you believe in yourself. And then all of a sudden it's like, then you see the results. Then you see the other people asking you, how are you doing this? And that's in the gym, that's in life, that's in everything else. It's not about, and I think a lot of times the fake it until you make it, that's part of to take it to another arena. That's the credit game. That's the debt game. You know, keeping up with the Joneses. It's like, all right, so now I got the nice car and, you know, all this stuff. And then, like, these people in their 20s and 30s that have graduated from college and they have fucking now $100,000 in debt, and then they have to, like, lease or buy the nicer car so they look like they belong at the job they just got, that they're making less money that can actually pay for any of the shit that they've just done. They got the wardrobe, they have the shoes, they have the, you know, they get the nice apartment or house. And it's like, next thing you know, they faked it until they made it. Cool. Now you're fucked. If you go ahead, Shannon.
So prime example. So when I passed my boards for the barber, you know, my barber's license, started at my first shop, and I remember the guy owned the shop. He looked at me and he was like, "Hey, don't tell anybody you're just out of barber college. Just tell you've been cutting for a few years and this and that." And I looked at him. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. That's me faking it. Like, if I give a bad haircut, I'm branded a bad barber if I've been in the game for 2 or 3 years, right?
Right.
So I would literally tell these people, if they ask me, like, how long you been cutting? Oh, for this amount of time. I'm still new to the game, but I'm not so new. I don't know when to ask for help. You know what I mean? And the haircuts, and that's served to me to my advantage, where I've actually learned. If I got to a spot where I didn't know what to do, I would ask for the help, and it'd give me that knowledge for the next step for the next time. But this guy wanted me to lie and fake it. I couldn't do that. That makes me look bad.
That's a short-term gain.
Yeah.
Not a long-term.
He was just wanting it for his shop.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Yeah.
So I took that, and I've been honest through my whole cuts. I mean,
how's it working out?
It's incredible now, because I would take those times where I got stuck or confused or didn't know what to do with the next step and ask for help.
I love it.
Yep.
And when they gave me the help, they said, and I say, oh, and I might have had that same move in my head, but I was scared to do it. But now that I'm not, my haircuts I'm killing the game now. I still got a lot to learn.
Always.
But now you have that technique or that knowledge.
Now I have
in
those
your
checks.
head.
I have those checks in my head when I get to a spot, like, oh yeah, I've been through this. Boom, let's go. What's next? So, yeah.
I dig it.
I've kind of had it. I've been on the other side of, I guess I can say the other side of fake it till you make it, because
I thought you were going to say the haircut. Not now. I mean, like in the past, I wasn't.
No, I mean, no. What I was saying is, like, I've had some times in my adult life, my professional life, where say I was going, for another job for another position within the same company, and I got beat out by someone who was simply able to talk a better game than me during the interview. They didn't necessarily have more experience than me. They didn't have more knowledge than me in that position. They just were able to talk a better game than me in the interview.
Sure.
And so they beat me out for that position. But then fast forward a year or 2 years later, that person's no longer even with the company and I'm still there. So
are you getting promotions though at this point?
No, unfortunately, I keep getting beat out for stuff. But my hope is, keep doing what I'm doing, keep growing as well. And so that way, when that interview comes, I'm not sitting there trying to blow smoke up their ass. I have a portfolio of knowledge and experience that I can actually lay down in front of them instead of just, trying to talk a bunch of bullshit in order to win a job.
Put a little bit of jazz hands into it and you'll be good, I think. There you go. Daniel, what do you got, man?
Yeah, I have kind of a similar experience to Nate's. I started my current profession, IT field, 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Started as an intern. I didn't know anything really, but I kept digging in and finding the answers and Googling, and when you come across those opportunities, you have to jump on them, whether you think you're ready or not. And sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. All right. So, but now 6 years later, I'm a system administrator for where I work, and I'm at the top tier level, of where I can be.
Hell yeah.
So it's like just applying yourself and keep going. You might fake it at the beginning, but do your best and just learn, and that's where you're going to get the.
I think anything else we talk about, Daniel, is the same thing, right? So you not fake it till you make it, but if you combine those two, right? You can fake it a little bit.
Fake it to get in the door.
Yeah. Put a little more sunshine on it, right? You know what I mean? Again, jazz hands it a little bit, but
That's part of.
But
first
don't
impressions.
just continue to do that, because that's what you were saying, like Shannon, like that's the short term. If you keep doing that, but you got to, stay hungry and
People will see through the bullshit.
Exactly. What do you want to bring up there, Dustin?
So Ian brought up earlier about bringing back the art of forgiveness towards people.
And how did you take that?
So I took that as, not necessarily a forgive and forget, but it's sometimes being the bigger person and sometimes just walking away. Maybe that is part of, maybe Jake's point of letting friends go.
Okay.
There's many different aspects to that art of forgiveness, but so many people anymore hold grudges, and all of that negativity is just going to continuously bring you down, both your mental state, your emotional state, and ultimately even your physical state.
Right.
It is. And the sad part is there's studies out there, psychology studies out there that negative reviews, negative remarks, negative conversations will spread 10 times more faster than positive.
Sure.
I mean, you look at today's world, how many positive things do you see out there in the world? You may see a sprinkle, a few, but what do we see mostly? Negativity. Constantly. I can't tell you how many times, like, I'll open up my Facebook feed and it's just, constant. And I scroll past it because I don't need that in my life. I don't. And some of that is, you forgive those people, even if you don't know them, you forgive them because they may not be in the right mental state. They could have a clouded judgment or a biased judgment, and ultimately that's still their opinion and their decision and their thoughts. They're entitled to that, whether you agree with it or not. But I think the art of forgiveness is lost. That's maybe just me.
Victoria brings up, and I try to respond to it. Forgiveness is for you. They don't care if you have forgiven you.
That's correct.
I don't know if that I said forgiving them.
So
It's a closure thing sometimes. I think for me with forgiveness is
It's hard. It's difficult. It's very, very difficult.
You want to be forgiven if you made a mistake,
Correct.
because it makes you feel better if they say they forgive you.
Yeah.
If you forgive other people, then it's up to them if they want to take that or not. But I think it's about closure, whichever side you're on, is that if you get forgiven, or at least you're told you're forgiven, then you can feel better about yourself to a point, and you hope that you can move past it. If you forgive someone else, it doesn't mean that it absolves everything, right? It doesn't just negate what happened or what you might be doing. But I think that the forgiveness thing is about opening up lines of communication. I look at right now, and I always say this, I don't want to dive down the rabbit hole, but there is something right now that is happening that I see on my social media feeds and what's going on right now with the political scope that we're in. That, and I said this to just people I know, is the next thing in 2021 is like the vaccine thing.
Yeah.
Is that it's like, oh, did you get the vaccine? Yes, cool. No. Oh, let me guess who you voted for. And it's like, dude, the election's over. You know what I mean? It's like, it's one of those things. It's, if you can't evolve or learn from certain things that have happened and then just move forward, I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are holding on to this election, this COVID experience, the BLM and all this stuff. Is like, I hope everyone learns something from this last year, so that you can actually communicate better, which we didn't do. I think there's a lot of, like, what we were talking about earlier was a lot of talking at versus speaking with. And I hope that you can translate that. And it's not necessarily the forgiveness, but it's not the grudges that you're talking about, Dustin. I think there's a lot of grudges that are going to be carried through 2021, 2022 in this country that people aren't going to let go. Especially for the 70, 80% of the people that are somewhere, that are moderate, that are in the middle of where their stance was, is that you got to pick. And it's like, there's not, out of 328 million people in this country, you're not just one or two. You're not A or B, which is the way it was oversimplified by the media, by some of the people on the far left, far right. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, oh, who'd you vote for? Well, I know you already. And it's like, well, fuck off. If you don't want to get to know me, you don't want to like know who I am as a person and why I voted the way I did. Would I vote that way again? You know, what am I going to do going forward? Am I going to listen, or am I going to like cap off my learning experience that we were talking about? It's all encompassing with this. But forgiveness or not, it's the same thing with people that make mistakes in personal relationships, business relationships, all that stuff. Is that forgiveness is one step. But if you're like, yeah, I forgive you, however, that's it. Is that true forgiveness, or is that going to be something where it's like, I'm not going to hold it against you anymore, but we're done as a business. We're done as a business relationship, personal relationship, as a whatever it is. You're not really forgiving. You're holding that grudge. Yeah, you just say the words, I'm forgiving you.
You're still holding on to it. You're trying to give yourself closure.
Victoria says life is too short. Amen.
But at the same time, you're holding yourself still to that.
Right.
And I think, to your point also, the whole political thing, everyone's using it as a crutch and a pedestal to help elevate themselves above everyone else.
Not going down that rabbit hole. I said that.
I know, but that plays into it. I think
it
too.
does. It does.
When I think about forgiveness, you know, so there's initially there's someone that pops in my head, and it's from an experience that both my mom and I share. And for the longest time, I had a lot of anger, animosity, hatred to that person that had wronged us, that was the cause of a lot of easy there, buddy. That caused a lot of negative issues in our life.
Yeah.
And you know, the way I looked at that, it took many years. But the way suddenly there was a day where I realized, if I'm sitting there and having those kind of thoughts and emotions towards that person, more likely than not, that person's not thinking about me. They don't they're not thinking about me. They don't give a damn about me. They don't care what my feelings are towards them whatsoever. But if I'm sitting there and holding a grudge and letting what they did to me have a negative impact on me, all I'm doing is giving them free rent up in my head. And so once I was able to get to the point to where I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop holding this grudge against that person. I'm no longer going to hold it over them. If I see that person, I'm no longer going to be a dick. Even though I may not like that person, I still don't like what they did.
You want to be a dick.
I'm not going to let that control my emotions. I'm not going to let that have a negative impact and influence on me. I'm going to learn from that, and I'm going to make myself better. And with that, it doesn't matter if that person accepts my forgiveness or not. I've done as much as I can. I'm no longer thinking about them. I don't care what they think about me. I'm not going to let them have that kind of influence or impact on me again.
Amen.
But it's more for my health to just let that go, get over it.
Yeah.
And it took me, sadly, it took me way too many years than it should have to finally come to that point.
Daniel?
Yeah, I think one thing that we as a society need to, really learn is that forgiveness is not about waiting for somebody to ask your forgiveness, or right, like too often we say, well, they've never asked me for forgiveness, so I'm not going to forgive them, or yeah, sorry, that's
so instead of that person,
right. So
instead of that person coming to you and saying, "Hey, I'm asking for your forgiveness," maybe
right.
go to them and be like, "Hey, you know what?
Well, you don't
whether you realize it or not, I forgive you.
Right,
I'm good."
Right, but also you don't need to let that person know that you forgave them.
That's true.
You don't. There's no need for that. It's in your heart. It's in your head. I forgive you. I don't need to dwell on this anymore. That's forgiveness. You don't need a response from the offending party for forgiveness.
Good point. I think if you're on the other side looking for forgiveness, just start living your life as if you learn from the mistakes.
Yeah.
I think that's going to go a long way. So, it's a heavy one.
It was a heavy one. You want to hit the one you had?
Yeah, one more here, right? Yeah.
I think it's a good one.
This one?
The golden rule.
Yeah. So this is another one. It sounds easy, yet challenge yourself to treat others like they hope to be treated, right? Also, treat yourself like you hope others will treat you. Fill your day with drive and love. Let's go.
I like that. I think it revolves around a lot of the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated.
Right.
But the added level to that is that point there at the end is treat yourself as you would want to be treated. And I think that's a piece that gets lost for a lot of people. Is those people who are so selfless that they look out for others more than themselves, they lose focus on themselves.
Right.
And they lose focus on their own health, their own mental place, and they get lost. And I think a lot of that can contribute to a lot of the, I'm not a doctor or anything like that by any means, but I think it contributes, right? The thing that contributes a lot to, the depression and anxiety and the stress levels is we put a lot of those things on ourselves, and I'm guilty of that a lot, is, I put the weight of everyone else on myself because I want everyone to, have that happy life, that healthy life, the less worries and to get through the difficult times. And, I try to be there for anyone and everyone that I can be, especially, my family and friends and close inner circle. And, that can play its toll, but at the same time, I need to learn to not lose focus on myself too.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I struggled with over the last couple years or so. And, I'm trying to work on regaining that in this new year. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a New Year's resolution. It's not something that I thought of at New Year's, like I'm going to do this. No, it's just something that over time I've thought about, that is something that really needs addressed for me personally. And,
That's good.
how can I put myself there for anyone else if I can't put myself there for myself?
Yeah, you gotta take care of yourself. It's that airplane thing we always talk about, right? You put your own mask on, so you can then put other people's masks on. You don't put theirs on first, because then you it's not going to work out.
I think what's important about what you said is it turns it from being outward to inward. So instead of just treating others, it's like, all right, treat you. Like you're taking care of yourself. Because if you take the care of yourself, mentally, physically, or whatever, then you can have, and we talked about this a little bit when Miguel was on a couple weeks ago. When you take care of yourself, you're better able to take care of other people.
That's right.
Like you were getting ready to bring up the mask, take care of your mask. That way, then you're able to take care of everyone else. You can't take care of other people's masks if you're passed out. So take care of you and then help those.
That's right.
So inward instead of outward. Focus.
Focus. A wise man once said that.
Steve Crane 2024.
Nope.
Fine. 2028. All right.
Nope.
You're going to get some votes.
Patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast.
Just saying. I'm writing it down. How about the rest of you guys?
Yeah.
Who's the Steve Crane guy?
Next panel.
Throw
Steve
out
Crane.
that ballot.
Why am I here? Go fuck yourselves.
Yeah. No, it's not that simple. Anyways, so I think at this point, no, I've enjoyed this conversation. This is good. I mean, it's something that we can plan for a little bit more next time, as far as having the audience participation, the community page, the Patreon page, the podcast page, everything else. This was a kind of a last minute audible, which I appreciate. We had a lot of content here. With that being said, though, thank our sponsors: Tinder Box at Easton, Altadis USA, BS Cigar Company, Patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. Guys, we appreciate all the support. That is something that is making this a lot easier, I know, for all of us. But I'm going to say personally, this has been that has been a big help for me to continue doing this from the very beginning. So I appreciate it. I hope that 2021 we can bring you guys some more rewards for being a part of it through swag and everything else and good content. I'm just talking to Nook from CLE and Aroa. Once New Holland opens back up in Michigan, we're going to try to do a road trip, try to do some more on-site stuff as opposed to just looking at the same garage. It's not a bad garage. But
it's a good studio.
That being said, closing remarks from you guys, and then I'll wrap it up here for those that are still listening.
You first, since you kept deferring.
Yeah,
earlier.
Dustin, you
Deal.
Just
Deal.
dive in there, man.
Well, I want to start by first kind of touching a little bit on what you said, Steve, before you dove into the sponsors. Was this was kind of a last minute. No, it was a last minute a thing, but I honestly believe, and I'm calling out to the community right now. Constantly, let's get a thread up there or announcement where everyone can
Topic ideas.
Yeah, where everyone can get topic
there is
ideas,
actually
questions.
on the community page, there is something that you can tag it as a topic idea.
Yeah, there's a pinned post.
Well, you can actually classify it as that.
So everyone out there, listeners, viewers, what have you, please go on there, go to the community page. If you're not already a part of it, join and get those topic ideas out there, and let's keep that thing going. So instances like this where we can dive into that archive of who presented what ideas, and we can reach into there and kind of really help get more, even more from the community. I think that'll really be beneficial. But I think overall the conversation tonight was really, really great. The whiskey and the cigar was really good tonight. So check out part 1 for those ratings.
Sure.
But the topic ideas, thank you to Jake and Ray and Ian, the studio audience, and everyone else out there who helped contribute to that for tonight. I think it really provided some great conversation. We were able to kind of jump around for topic to topic and kind of keep that thing rolling, and had some good fun and some good laughs and some good deep conversations. And that's what this is all about. We're constantly building each other and building ourselves. So hopefully everyone out there was able to get something from it. I know I did. So thank you to everyone watching, listening, and cheers.
Cheers. Nate?
It was nice to have, something. It was a little bit more lighthearted tonight with some of the topics that were brought up. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes we'll go into a stretch on the podcast where every week, we're diving deep into something. And, sometimes it's nice just to have kind of those lighthearted conversations and, just sit there and talk. Cause this is what happens in a cigar shop. You don't sit there and just spend 3 hours talking to people about the same thing the whole time. Like you're
Sometimes
talking,
you do.
Sometimes you may, if it's a serious enough topic, but sometimes you're just talking about life, and there's a lot of aspects to life. And that's the same thing with tonight's episode. There were a lot of questions and a lot of topics that we covered. None of them were really ones that we could sit there and spend 2 hours talking about. So it was one of those where we could just sit there and bring up something. We give our views, listeners, put their comments or get on the guest mic and share their views. And it's great. I also think it highlights what a nice community that we have with this podcast.
Absolutely.
And I think what I would like to highlight is if you're someone who has an issue or you have a question, like don't be afraid to reach out to the community page. If you have that issue, because instead of waiting for a podcast and hearing the three of us and our studio audience or whoever just happens to be listening that night, give you their 2 cents, you can put it out there for the community, and you're going to hear a lot of different feedback from the community. But having more people there to listen, you're going to hear, more opinions. You're going to hear more ideas. And, one of those may be the one that, works best for your situation.
Right.
So don't be afraid to just, put out what you're going through and what you need help with. That's why we call it a community.
Can I add something real quick to your point, Nate?
Sure.
Not to really interject, but like you said, reach out to the community, even if you feel like you don't have any friends. If you're a part of the community and you haven't contributed, no, I'm serious. There's a lot of people out there who don't feel like, even if they are a part of the community,
If you want an outside perspective.
Yeah.
How about that?
If you're an outside perspective, or even if you're a part of the community, you haven't really posted anything or contributed or really been watching, and you feel like out there, you just, you don't really have anybody, please just reach out.
Well, and that's,
you have more people than you actually think you do.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, there's about 1,300 members in the community page. And that's one of the good things about the community is, the community page is not one of those where everyone's just posting what they're smoking that night or what they're drinking that night. Like there are some people that actually post things that are going on in their lives, things, trials that are coming up and shit that they're dealing with, whether it be their health or a loved one's health. And what we've seen in the past is, someone put it out there like, hey, this is what I'm going through. And we've seen this community, people in this community come around that person and show them support.
Yeah.
And offer to be there for that person if they need it. And that, I think that's what's great. And I think that's something that tonight's episode highlighted is, it's okay to put it out there because, we're going to help you out the best way we can, or the best that we can.
Yeah, I think part 2, Beyond the BS, that was from the original design of this podcast. So the first part's always the cigars and whiskey, and then it turns into more than that, just like life does. I would encourage to build off of you guys. The community page is something that kind of branches off of all this stuff. And I've tried to, especially recently, lead by example. Sometimes it is a cigar, sometimes it's whiskey that I post, but the walks and everything like that. When I post it on the community page or my personal page, is you can smoke a cigar and do other things, and you can put thoughts out there, and I encourage all you guys to do that. Tonight, it was cool to see the different topics. I sometimes it derails a little bit, which is fine. I mean, that's how conversations go, right? But I will say that, as always, the overwhelming themes that I always get from these kind of conversations is that it's about balance. We always talk about that. It's about putting yourself out there. It's about good communication. It's about not only good communication, but it's about talking. It's about getting your viewpoint out there. It's not just dwelling on shit. It's not about just like keeping it just on yourself. But as I said earlier, I think this is something that sometimes you need to be able to self-reflect and give yourself a moment to do whatever your meditation is. It's to get away from everything. And if you can, I guess the other thing is that when things are good, still do that. Don't wait. Nate, you brought it up, with my life and other people's lives, is that it's like you get these big inspirational moments when things are down. And I'm a big proponent, typically, that when things are going well, you keep those things going. But it is about how you react when things don't go like planned.
Mm-hmm.
However, don't wait to that moment. To appreciate what you have. It's an activity. It's a staying active. It's staying present in what is going well, so that you don't find yourself, hopefully within your control, that things may go south. Because a lot of times when things go south, it's because the parties involved are not doing the things we're talking about, communicating, appreciating. It's staying active in the moment and being that active listening we talked about a few weeks ago and all that stuff. So I like this. I hope that everyone out there really enjoyed it. It's different. I will throw out there that I got to confirm with him, but next week's guest, I'm really looking forward to. Pete Scalia.
Yeah,
is a local guy. He's been on the news for a long time. Hopefully he is. I'll confirm with him tomorrow that he's going to be here, but he has gone through a lot. He is now since retired at a fairly younger age from the news anchor position. He's been on a couple local in Columbus, Ohio, which is a decent news network. Obviously, it's a high profile. Yeah. Love the guy. I've met him face to face a handful of times. He's part of the community, but we're going to get him on. He's starting a new venture, Never Give Up. Okay. So I don't know if you guys know Pete or what his story is, but I will say that if you guys are tuning in next week, it is one that you're not going to want to miss. So, Pete, we're looking forward to having you on and learning more about your story and what you're doing, where you're going to go forward with this whole Never Give Up type program that you're really pushing. It's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to it. I'm
excited for that.
So, guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Happy New Year again. All that good stuff, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, fellas.
Enjoy your week.
Ladies and gents.
We will see you soon.